Chapter 654. The Dragonborn boss dropped a treasure chest, and the second gold equipment was a bracer. Blade scale bracer, binds after pickup, grade, hero, gold, equipment position, bracer, equipment requirement, 35 base strength, attribute, strength +3, additional skill, blade scale, passive. For every 10 points of attack you have, you will gain 1 point of additional armor. For every 10 points of armor you have, you will gain 1 point of additional attack. The additional armor and attack obtained from this skill do not stack. Durability description: tremble before the blade scale Dragonborn's tough armor. This piece of equipment was the same as the broadsword Dragonborn Arbiter. It was a top-grade gold-grade equipment that fit the heavy and violent warrior path. Unfortunately, it did not fit the path of the White Phoenix team. If Li Shi's strength was enough, she could consider this equipment. However, her strength was only 23 points. Even if the Bone Tooth Necklace's 5 free attribute points were fully developed and leveled up to level 7, she would not be able to meet the requirements. Bai Xiaowen once again felt that the gold equipment in the high-level realms had higher and higher requirements for certain basic attributes. Most of the time, it did not even meet the requirements to equip it. It was completely different from the gold equipment obtained in the low-level and middle-level realms, which had no or very low requirements. This seemed to be the result of some kind of standardized operation of the spirit world's rules. It was to make the role of every high-level awaken more distinct. For example, the agility type Li Shi couldn't wear the blade scale wrist armor that was suitable for violent warriors. And if it was a warrior with high strength who wanted to wear Li Shi's Blood Monarch's emblem, the requirement of 30 points of basic agility would make them flinch. This showed that the Bone Tooth Necklace increased free attribute points, and the value of being able to redistribute free attribute points at any time greatly increased the flexibility of the awakened in choosing equipment. After opening the gold treasure chests of the 4 bosses, the White Phoenix team opened 7 silver treasure chests. 2 of the silver treasure chests were unlucky, and the other 5 treasure chests gave them 2 blue equipment, some frozen jerky, bitter root, and other food. The Dragonborn monsters have a tough life. I really don't know how they survive in this world of ice and snow, Li Shi lamented. The 3 of them chatted while waiting for Gloria's awakening ritual to be completed. Of course, Qiao Rui did not let his guard down. The spirit of the falcon had been circling in the sky, observing any new monster horde that might appear. She had to admit that this battle had given her a new understanding of Bai Xiaowen's combat ability. It was no wonder that Li Shi had such a relaxed attitude when faced with an A+ elite mission. Gradually, the 120-minute awakening ceremony came to an end. The vortex of energy was sucked into the bottom of the frozen lake like a whale sucking in water. With Gloria as the center, a powerful cold airflow swept across and spread out. The surrounding snow, as well as the broken ice and bones formed by the battle, were all blown far away, revealing the crystal-clear surface of the ice lake. Crack, crack, the sound of ice cracking could be heard continuously. Bai Xiaowen looked down and saw that cracks had appeared on the ice layer from the inside. He quickly ordered Li Shi and Qiao Rui to retreat. At the same time, he controlled the undead creatures and the Wrath Claw to create a 50-meter radius around Gloria. Crack! Boom! About 5 meters in front of Bai Xiaowen, a layer of ice exploded, and ice crystals spread in all directions. A giant bony claw with tattered skin and flesh stretched out from the ice, and then landed heavily on the surface of the frozen lake. Diagonally opposite, another bony claw stretched out. The powerful creature beneath the thick ice stretched out its 2 bony claws. It seemed to be accumulating strength for a moment before pressing down with its claws. Its huge spine that was covered with bone spikes broke through the ice, and with a crash, a huge dragon skull was revealed. This dragon skull still had the 2 horns of a giant dragon, and the soul fire burned slowly in the depths of its eye sockets. Then, 2 tattered bony wings rose up like sails. Whoosh! The bony wings flapped, and this huge creature finally rushed into the sky. Did it succeed? What a powerful bone dragon! The 3 members of the White Phoenix team were a little surprised. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, they would not have believed that the leader Ter Gloria could awaken such a huge bone dragon. I am the one who gave you a new life. Listen to my orders. Gloria leaned on her greatsword and appeared from the pile of broken ice, shouting at the bone dragon soaring in the sky. Whoosh! The bone dragon retracted its wings and landed on a higher layer of ice. Its eyes, burning with faint phosphorescence, examined Gloria. Something seems wrong. Qiao Rui suddenly said, I feel that the soul of this bone dragon is a little chaotic. Could it be that it has been sleeping at the bottom of the lake for too long? Gloria snorted heavily. Who is messing with me, ruining my plan? Her sharp ice-blue eyes suddenly looked at a snow hill in the distance. A dry voice sounded, ha ha ha. Young Death Knight, thank you for your gift, this bone dragon is mine. Gloria narrowed her eyes slightly, and pointed the bone greatsword slightly. The elite specters and Arachne immediately launched a silent charge, looking like they were about to flatten the snow hill. Bai Xiaowen also quietly made a gesture, and the White Phoenix team approached the snow hill under the cover of the ghosts and spider demons. Suddenly, a powerful mental wave came, and all the elite ghosts and spider demons fell into a momentary daze. A skinny figure stood on the snow hill. It was a lich. On the lich's skinny face, the lower jaw opened and closed, and through magic, his declaration echoed in the field, I am the Lich Bard, I am immortal. Now, submit to me, Death Knight. I will guide you to take revenge on the living. Bai Xiaowen stopped in his tracks. No wonder he could affect the actions of the undead monsters in the Death Kingdom and cause the Bone Dragon's mind to become chaotic. It turned out that this lich called Bard was behind it. The Lich Bard was indeed confident. Compared to the strength-type Death Knight who was good at melee combat, as a lich, he was better at controlling the spirit of undead monsters and casting spells to assist the undead monsters in battle, similar to the summoning profession among the awakened. Bard had also been hiding nearby, using a mental barrier to avoid the detection of Qiao Rui and Bai Xiaowen, and at the critical moment of the Bone Dragon's appearance, he led it in an attempt to seize control of the Bone Dragon. Asterisk 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 asterisk. Li Shui, should we get rid of this guy? We probably don't need to do anything. Let's observe Gloria's movements first. Bai Xiaowen didn't think that Gloria needed the help of the White Phoenix team to deal with this lich. Logically speaking, the White Phoenix team had already completed their mission of protecting Gloria from being disturbed during the 120-minute awakening ceremony. A trace of mockery appeared in Gloria's eyes. Lich Bard, I can smell the stench on your body. You must have been locked up in a dark prison for hundreds of years, right? Gloria's tone was sarcastic. You just came out of the mausoleum of the Northshire Abbey, and you want to die so much? Lich Bard was slightly stunned. You also came out of the mausoleum? No, there's only one Death Knight in the mausoleum, Kale. Lowly Lich, you don't understand what kind of existence you're facing. Gloria snorted. You dare to compare me with a Death Knight? I'm the ruler of the undead, the Empress of the Death Kingdom. You think you can shake my rule over the undead with your lowly skill of playing with the spirit? Dream on. Gloria's voice gradually became louder. I'll show you my power. Suddenly, the bone dragon flapped its wings and swept across the battlefield at a low altitude. The elite ghosts and spiders who were originally in a daze all opened their mouths and roared silently. They once again waved their claws and fangs and swarmed toward Lich Bard, instantly surrounding him. Lich Bard was inexplicably shocked. You're just a Death Knight. You shouldn't have such a powerful spirit control ability. Wrong, this isn't a spirit control ability, but a natural rank. Gloria was like a charlatan as she said coldly, I'm the destined ruler of the undead. With a click, the bone dragon's claws firmly grasped Bard's skeletal body and brought him up into the sky. Then, the bone dragon circled and returned to Gloria, throwing Lich Bard in front of Gloria as if he was a piece of trash. Before the Lich Bard could speak, the skeletal greatsword glowing with a cold light was placed on its shoulder blade. Submit. Gloria's voice was low. Or perish. This, Majesty. As an undead creature, Lich Bard had not felt sweat for a long time. Now, he suddenly had this feeling. This was not sweat in the literal sense, but a fear that came from the soul. Gloria waited for 3 seconds and raised her greatsword. Wait! Wait! Lich Bard and Bai Xiaowen shouted almost at the same time. The human and the Lich instinctively looked at each other. Bai Xiaowen turned to look at Gloria and said with a smile, "Lady Gloria, this guy seems to be very disobedient." "It's okay, I'll kill him for you. You know, we outsiders like to fight bosses the most." "Oh, no, get rid of evil for the people." Lich Bard saw Bai Xiaowen's fervent gaze and could not help but shudder. He said loudly, "Wait, I'm willing to submit." Tisk, Bai Xiaowen looked at the Lich in disdain and continued to slander Gloria. "You can't trust this guy so easily. It's better to kill him cleanly." Gloria shook her head slightly and ignored Bai Xiaowen. Instead, she said to Lich Bard, "Offer me your soul mark." Bard's face was bitter. If a Lich could see his expression, this should be his expression. His soul fire jumped greatly, and soon, a tiny pale flame appeared out of thin air. Gloria's skeletal greatsword was leveled, and the pale flame was suddenly sucked in. Lich Bard's head drooped, looking rather dejected. He knew that from now on, he could no longer disobey Gloria's orders. Otherwise, his soul would suffer 1,000 times more. Unless Gloria's power weakened, he could not take back his soul mark. Bai Xiaowen was amazed. The undead leader took in underlings in such a simple and crude way. Bai Xiaowen also understood that Gloria had the idea of asking him to surrender from the beginning. Otherwise, she would have already spat out a breath of death. He just said that he wanted to kill Bard, but it was just an act. Unfortunately, Gloria was too cold and did not cooperate. It couldn't be helped. The undead kingdom was now poor, and there were plenty of undead who had lost their minds. However, Gloria was the only intelligent leader. It wasn't easy to find a Lich, so there was no reason not to capture it. The Bone Dragon was also an undead leader with self-awareness. However, it had just been awakened, and its level of development was still very low. It needed time to experience more things before it could gradually become intelligent. "Dior, you have completed the mission well. You are qualified to receive my reward," Gloria said. Spiritual World's Rules Prompt Information, a plus elite side mission, Tomb of the Giant Dragon has been completed and automatically submitted. Mission completion rate, excellent. You have received 2,500 achievement points, Kingdom of Death. Your reputation in the Kingdom of Death has increased. Current reputation level, respected, unchanged. Gloria's favorability towards you has increased. There was no need to say much about the series of favorability and reputation notifications. Gloria's favorability was still stuck at friend, and her admiration was still stuck at admire. There was no substantial breakthrough at all. Bai Xiaowen secretly complained. After becoming a Black Knight, Gloria seemed to have become a lot colder. He kind of missed the champion knight of grace of God who was always exuding the aura of righteousness and light when he flirted with her underwear. "I have awakened the Bone Dragon. It will be my mount. I will ride it and rule this world." Gloria once again made a Chinibu declaration. Bai Xiaowen suddenly thought of something. "Wait, this Bone Dragon is a leader-level template. It will also develop intelligence in the future. You have to give it a name." Gloria nodded slightly, and then looked at Bai Xiaowen with an inquiring look. Li Shi pulled Bai Xiaowen. "Don't do something you are not good at," Qiao Rui smiled. "As long as the captain doesn't come up with a name like 4455. Bai Xiaowen was full of confidence. "Don't worry, I have already thought of a good name." He suddenly pointed his finger at the Bone Dragon and said loudly, "From today onwards, your name will be Sindagosa." Then, the Bone Dragon ignored him. It was not even interested in turning its head to look at him. "Sindagosa? Does this name have any special meaning?" Li Shi asked curiously. Bai Xiaowen said seriously, "Yes, it does. Isn't Drago the name of a dragon? And according to the dragon naming rules, blah, 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 blah." He said a lot. Chapter 655. My name is Syndagosa. In the name of my master, Gloria, I will bring about the end of coldness and death. I am the Frost Dragon. The Frost Dragon Syndagosa spread its skeletal wings and soared in the sky. The sound formed by magic resonance rumbled and shook the world. Hey, it doesn't seem to be snowing anymore. It's sunny now, Li Shui said. At some point, the dark clouds in the sky had completely dissipated. The pale white sun in the northern region was exposed, and sunlight shone down. The originally gloomy dragon graveyard now had a bit of a bright and pleasant scenery. Qiao Rui said, the whispers of the souls have almost disappeared. The death energy in the dragon graveyard has probably been used up by Gloria. That's why the dark clouds have dissipated. Bai Xiaowen nodded. Large graveyards were often full of yin energy because there were too many dead buried there, resulting in a high concentration of death energy. The dragon graveyard itself had many dragons buried there. Later, adventurers and armies came to steal treasures and fought. Countless lives had died there. Of course, the concentration of death energy was ridiculously high. It seemed that Gloria had spent a lot of effort to awaken Syndagosa and add a skeletal dragon to the kingdom of death. The right time, place, and people were indispensable. This process was very difficult to replicate. Unless they encountered another large graveyard where a complete dragon's corpse was buried. This was normal. If the process of awakening Syndagosa could be replicated infinitely, it would not be long before a large group of skeletal dragons appeared in the kingdom of death. Neither the Lionheart Empire nor the Resistance Army would be able to fight. With the completion of the mission, Bai Xiaowen also received a notification from the spiritual realm. Dark Knight Gloria has learned the skill, Eternal Servitude. Eternal Enslavement. Gloria selects the corpse of a living being and absorbs its death energy to revive it into an undead creature. Casting time, 10-120 minutes. Determined by the target corpse's template level. Casting time, 10-120 minutes. The template of the revived undead creature is the same as when it was alive, but it will not exceed the commander level. While the creature is alive, all damage suffered by Gloria will be borne by it. The Eternal Servitude skill will not be used. At this point, the Dark Knight Gloria had learned all 4 skills. After her reincarnation, she gained a skill, Cursed Blade, which increased the power of her normal attacks and could revive the enemies killed by Gloria. There was no need to mention how powerful this skill was. The second skill was Undead Sacrifice, which was an army skill that gave buffs to allies. The third skill, Death's Grasp, was also very special. It could forcefully pull the caster and ranged attackers over. It could be considered an alternative movement skill. For Gloria, who had many minions, this kind of pulling skill was more advantageous than rushing over. Finally, there was the new skill, Eternal Servitude. According to Bai Xiaowen's understanding, this skill was actually a bit like the Great Wolf contract of the Orc chieftain, Absalon. Currently, the target of the enslavement was Syndagosa, and Gloria's total HP was actually equal to the sum of her HP and Syndagosa's HP. There was also the special skill Breath of Death, which was a large AoE skill. Bai Xiaowen could already feel Gloria's power. She was more powerful than any leader he had ever seen. Even Kevin, who was known to be the most versatile, could not be compared to Gloria. Among the leader-level powerhouses, Gloria could be said to be at the top. However, compared to the lords, there was still a big gap. Next, Gloria commanded the undead army to sweep through the Dragon's Tomb again. As the Dragon's Tomb had been through turmoil, there were not many valuable things left. The undead army dug 3 feet into the ground and only found a few scattered rotten dragon bones and some crystallized ancient dragon blood. Bai Xiaowen was quite envious. Unfortunately, he was not a native of the Aran Plain world. Even if these things were plundered, they did not belong to him. He had no rights to them. The goal of the Dragon's Tomb has been perfectly achieved, Gloria said in a cold voice. Next is Silver Star City. Lich Bard said doubtfully, Silver Star City is isolated overseas, remote and barren. It's not worth much. Why didn't Lady Gloria seize the nearby Northshire? With the current strength of our kingdom of death, we can definitely seize it. Bai Xiaowen pursed his lips. This lich was really shameless. He had already considered himself a member of the kingdom of death and was still working hard to make his presence known and fight for the right to speak. Shut up, Bard. Do as I say. Don't ask why. Gloria's response was domineering. Yes, my lady. Lich Bard was rebuffed and could only lower his head to show that he could not afford to offend her. After marching for more than 10 hours, Gloria and the White Phoenix team returned to the foot of the mountain in the monastery and gathered the rest of the sleeping undead monsters. Then, they set off toward the eastern strait. Qiao Rui's Spirit of the Falcon made a contribution and saw a human army rushing toward the monastery. The undead army did not want to be entangled with the human army and chose another fork in the road, avoiding the march. According to Bai Xiaowen's estimation, the group of human soldiers should have come from Northshire. They probably heard the news and went to check on the current situation of the monastery. After a night's march, the undead army arrived at the western shore of the Bogus Strait. According to the plan, the low undead dived into the sea and crossed the strait, while the White Phoenix team and Gloria rode the frost dragon Syndagosa and flew towards Silver Star Island. Lich Bard had a glorious and arduous mission, and that was to lead the undead army into the sea and act as their protector and guide. Although Lich Bard was very, very reluctant and felt that this was an insult to him, he could not do anything. Gloria controlled his soul imprint, which was equivalent to holding his life in her hands. Gloria's orders were absolute. Moreover, Bai Xiaowen's words were reasonable. As a lich, a leader who was good at buffing undead creatures, was he not the most suitable babysitter? In the end, Bard was a little fooled and had the feeling that what he said is so reasonable that I have nothing to say. To be honest, the Frost Wyrm Syndagosa was not an ideal mount. This big guy with a wingspan of more than 30 meters was completely made up of thick bones that flowed with death energy. It was quite uncomfortable. Also, the flight of the frost dragon was not as smooth as that of a Boeing plane. It was only because Gloria was sitting on its head that Syndagosa did not do some flips and twirls. However, the bumpy up and down and the impact of the cold air were unavoidable. Fortunately, Syndagosa's back was full of huge bone spurs that looked like spears. The 3 members of the White Phoenix team each hugged a bone spur to stabilize their bodies and were not thrown off by this big guy. Chapter 656. Gloria and the White Phoenix squad stepped onto the frozen land, while Syndagosa flapped his wings and flew into the sky, circling in the clouds. Is this Silverstar Island? It looks desolate, Qiao Rui said. Bai Xiaowen had already opened the map. We have crossed the Bogus Strait, and we are now in the northwest of Silverstar Island. Silverstar City is located in the center of the island. According to the information, the Lord of Silverstar City, Aldington, rules very strictly. The officials are corrupt, and the gangs run rampant. The civilians have to pay high taxes, so they are very poor and can easily become slaves. Slaves? There should be no slavery in the air and plane, right? Li Shi said. Silverstar Island is the only territory in the northern region where slavery is legal, Bai Xiaowen said. That's despicable. Well, it seems that we are not liberators, Li Shi said with a smile. This way, Silverstar Island should be easier to take down. That Lord Aldington doesn't seem to be popular. A cold voice sounded. Gloria said, No, Aldington has a powerful army. Bai Xiaowen shrugged and said, Don't underestimate the resistance of the Vikings in the northern region. If Aldington wants to maintain his dictatorship, he must have a strong military force. No matter how strong he is, he can't resist death. Gloria's words had a tendency to be childish. Let's familiarize ourselves with the local situation first, and wait for the Lich Bard to arrive with his army of the dead, Bai Xiaowen said. The group moved forward as they talked, and soon they came to a village. Perhaps it was because of the strict rule of Silver Star Island, but this small village named Mirage Saltpeter Village was also very dilapidated. Most of the houses were made of clay, reeds, and straw. There was not even a single decent wooden house. "Lady Gloria, please wait for a moment," Bai Xiaowen said. "If we want to gather information, the three of us are more suitable to disguise ourselves as wandering mercenaries. Your image doesn't fit." Bai Xiaowen and the other two were all dressed in linen robes that were tacitly approved by the rules of the spirit realm. It was not a problem for them to disguise themselves as wanderers. Gloria, on the other hand, was different. Her entire body was covered in high-quality armor, which was originally a piece of high-level magical equipment. Moreover, due to the infusion of death energy, it had turned dark blue and was emitting a cold aura. Even the most ignorant commoner could tell that it was extraordinary. "My patience is limited." "Go quickly," Gloria replied. The three members of the White Phoenix team walked all the way into the luminous saltpeter village. Bai Xiaowen knocked on the door of a thatched cottage at the entrance of the village. A panicked voice sounded from the other side of the door. Wait a minute." When the door opened, a white-haired elderly couple looked at the three members of the White Phoenix squad. Their faces were still filled with shock. However, after seeing Bai Xiaowen and the other two's linen robes, the elderly couple seemed to be relieved. One of the old ladies even muttered, "Luckily, it's not crossflowers." "What's a crossflower?" Li Shi asked in the teen channel. "It's the emblem of the Aldington family, 2 crossed roses." Bai Xiaowen also explained in the teen channel. Then, he tried his best to show a kind smile and looked at the elderly couple. "Fellow countrymen. Well, hello, we're mercenaries from afar. We just got off the ship and want to find a place to rest. Don't worry, we'll pay as much as we need." Bai Xiaowen's high charm came into play. Although the old man's eyes were a little suspicious, his tone was not very bad. "Our house is not suitable for too many people. It's too small and there's not even a place to sit. You're mercenaries? Sigh, you've come to the wrong place. There's no business here." "We're the best mercenaries," Bai Xiaowen said with a smile. "Aren't there any ferocious beasts nearby, such as tigers, jackals, wolves, or dragons? Is there a bounty for them?" "There are beasts, but they rarely enter the village. As for dragons, I've never seen one." The old man sighed. "Who has the spare money to post a bounty for beasts? The feudal lord's army is much more ferocious than tigers, leopards, jackals, and wolves." "The feudal lord's army of Silverstar City? How many of them are there?" Bai Xiaowen smoothly led the conversation. "Who knows, 1,000 or 2. It's all the same to us," the old woman sighed. "You'd better hurry up and leave. Today is the day the tax officer goes to the countryside. It's time to pay the taxes for this quarter. I don't know how many people in the village will be taken away as slaves. No one wants to resist." Bai Xiaowen was a little confused. "We're just unarmed civilians. How can we resist? Every time the tax officer goes to the countryside, he'll bring a team of soldiers with him," the old man said. After hearing this news, Bai Xiaowen narrowed his eyes and thought for a while. Then, he took his leave. 2 hours later, 2 people on horseback came to the village, followed by a small group of soldiers. Bai Xiaowen could sense the strength of the 2 people on horseback. One of them was just an ordinary person, wearing the cloth robes of a civil servant. He should be the so-called tax officer. The other person was a fully armed cavalryman with the strength of an elite. The other ordinary soldiers followed behind him, giving off a sense of obedience. "Dior, how long do you want me to wait?" Gloria said impatiently. The desire to destroy rose in Gloria's frozen heart. This Black Knight who had just reincarnated was eager to fight and kill. "Be a little more patient. As for the reason, I've already told you, Lady Gloria," Bai Xiaowen said. Gloria snorted. "Your reason is not convincing at all. If it wasn't for the fact that Lich Bard and the undead army needed time to arrive, I wouldn't have waited at all." Bai Xiaowen smiled. Just as he was about to comfort her, he suddenly heard the noise of people coming from the village. "All right, let's move," Bai Xiaowen said after looking into the distance. Gloria snorted and strode forward. The White Phoenix team followed closely behind. Currently, the entire Mirage village was in chaos. Obviously, as the old couple said, there were many civilians in the village who could not afford to pay the taxes. According to the laws of the Silver Star territory, they would be reduced to slaves and do manual labor in Lord Aldington's workshop. It was a dead end. The only difference was how long they could endure. More than a dozen poor civilians were tied up with ropes. The fully armed soldiers of the Crossflower were punching and kicking the families of these quasi-slaves to separate them. Chapter 657. A little girl who had been knocked to the ground cried out loudly with tears all over her face, "You bandits! You are more hateful than bandits." "Hey, I can't pretend that I didn't hear that." The elite cavalryman raised his chin. "Whose family raised this little girl? This family is very problematic. From this, it can be seen that your parents are very dissatisfied with the Lord's army." The elite cavalryman paused and looked at the villagers of Mirage Village. Who are her parents? No one answered, and even the little girl shrank back. "If no one claims her, I can only bring her back to the castle." The elite cavalryman stretched out a whip and lifted the little girl's chin with the tip of the whip, revealing a smile. "Stop. I am her father." Unexpectedly, the one who spoke was a middle-aged man who was tied up. His face was emaciated and his cheeks were thin. He was very timid when facing the strong soldiers, but at this time, he bravely stood up. "Please let her go." "Ha, so you are a poor man who can't afford to pay taxes and sold himself as a slave. As expected, you can't teach any good things." The elite cavalryman sneered, then waved his hand. "If you become a slave, your daughter won't be able to live either, right? Then take them all away and treat it as doing a good deed." "No!" The little girl was caught by a strong soldier and screamed like a helpless little beast. She bit the soldier's arm. "Hey, you little bitch!" The soldier let go of the little girl in pain and let her slip away. He angrily rushed to catch her. "Please stop." At the entrance of the village, Bai Xiaowen and the others visited the old couple. The old man stood up and stopped the soldier. "Get lost, old man. This is none of your business." The soldier angrily punched out, but the old man's body flickered with a layer of faintly glowing shield, blocking the attack. "Spellcaster?" The elite cavalryman carefully looked at the old man and then laughed. "Well, it turns out to be an old apprentice." This old man was just an ordinary mage, and his level was only level 6. In the air and plane world, he could indeed be regarded as an apprentice. Those in the spirit world who could be called mage were at least elites, and those who had the title of great mage were usually leaders that were level 7 and above. Bai Xiaowen, who had been hiding in the dark, clicked his tongue in wonder. He had actually made a mistake in the beginning. Of course, that was because he had not used insight. Moreover, the old wizard apprentice had probably not cast a spell in battle for a very, very long time. The psionic waves on his body were very obscure. If one did not pay attention, one would not be able to tell that he had a normal template. Of course, as soon as he cast a shield spell, the fluctuations of his psionic particles could no longer be hidden. Therefore, the elite cavalry captain immediately saw through the old apprentice. "Old man, don't think you're amazing just because you know some mediocre spells. I've even seen Master Mo Luo several times. Why would I care about an old apprentice like you? Get out of my way." The old mage apprentice sighed and said, "You've already gotten what you wanted. Why don't you let this innocent little girl go? She didn't violate the laws of the Silver Star territory. She's still a free person. That's not up to you, old man. Do you want to defy the Aldington family?" The elite cavalry raised his whip. The old mage apprentice lowered his head. "Take her away." The elite cavalry laughed and waved his whip as he gave the order. A soldier had already bypassed the old apprentice and caught the little girl who was hiding everywhere. The soldiers pushed and shoved to open the way. They tied up a group of would-be slaves and embarked on the journey home. On the other side. "It's about time," Bai Xiaowen muttered to himself. Gloria, on the other hand, had already strode out and stopped at the village entrance. "Who's there?" The soldiers of the Silver Star territory were not fools. When they saw the mysterious woman in blue armor and holding a skull greatsword blocking the village entrance, their first reaction was to ask for details. They did not dare to rush forward. What a joke! The cold aura on Gloria's body was almost solid. Even a layman could see that she was extraordinary, not to mention these soldiers who often fought. However, Gloria was not interested in talking to the minions. She directly shot out a breath of death. Boom! More than a dozen soldiers with ordinary templates could not withstand the constitution test. Their skin rapidly aged and wrinkled, and they died tragically on the spot. Meanwhile, the leading elite cavalryman's HP rapidly fell by a large chunk, his face contorted in fear. It was worth mentioning that the would-be slaves escorted by the soldiers were not harmed by the breath of death. If they were also injured, they, who were not even ordinary templates, would definitely not be able to withstand the devastation of this breath of death. This showed that in Gloria's subjective attitude, she did not regard those would-be slaves as hostile targets. This was also the result of Bai Xiaowen's strong request in the previous 2 hours. "Who are you? Who are you?" The elite cavalry fell from the back of the horse. His face was full of fear as he said incoherently, "You are provoking the Aldington family. You are defying the Silver Star Lord." Bai Xiaowen coughed. It was his turn to make an appearance. "Sorry, worldly power means nothing to us. Because we are the messengers of death, we worship the god of death. In the face of death, everyone is equal. You talk too much nonsense, Dior." Gloria glanced at Bai Xiaowen from the corner of her eyes. She took a step forward and stabbed the skeletal greatsword cleanly. The elite cavalry, who did not say his name until he died, was pierced through the chest by the sword without any ability to resist. He fell to the ground and died. The commoners of Monluan village looked at this scene in horror. The tax officer and knight sent by the Lord have been killed. The old mage apprentice muttered. Then, he looked at the White Phoenix team and Gloria in shock. "You are not ordinary mercenaries. Who are you?" "We are from the Cursing Sect. This is our leader." Bai Xiaowen smiled as he pointed at Gloria. "I have never heard of the sect." The old mage apprentice did not believe it. "Now you've heard it." Bai Xiaowen coughed to cover up his embarrassment. "All right, but this is not important." The old mage apprentice looked at the corpses on the ground and sighed. "The Lord's tax officer and a group of soldiers have died here. Soon, there will be a stronger army coming from Silver Star City. You will be killed, and we will become slaves. You have another choice," Bai Xiaowen said with a smile. "Join the Cursing Sect. The sect will protect you. We don't even know where you are from. How can we join? Can we really trust these strangers? But they just saved Sonia and killed the tax officer." Chapter 658. Swish, swish, swish. Li Shi, Qiao Rui, and Gloria all looked at Bai Xiaowen, especially the 2 teammates who had a strange smile on their faces, as if they were waiting to watch a good show. However, they were very subtle and did not show it on their faces. Bai Xiaowen cleared his throat and said, "Humans are born unequal. Humans are born unequal. The feudal lord rules over the commoners and casually enacts laws, turning the poor among you into slaves. This is injustice. However, in the face of death, everyone is equal. The Cursing Sect serves the god of death. Those who obey and contribute to the sect will receive the glory of reincarnation after death. As long as they pass the trial, their souls will live forever. Those who disobey and obstruct the development of the sect will be punished after death." Bai Xiaowen concluded, "The Cursing Sect strives to eliminate all unfairness on earth and build a fair and orderly kingdom of death. This is our doctrine." Bai Xiaowen's doctrine described the process of the dead turning into undead as the glory of reincarnation, which was a good disguise. He mixed in some ideas of karma into the doctrine, which could be considered a preliminary outline of the sect's program. However, Bai Xiaowen did not lie. His black soul stone could store the souls of the dead, and by consuming the soul essence, it could still retain the target's complete soul. Wasn't this the eternal soul? The surrounding villagers were all skeptical as they cast their gazes on the old apprentice. Obviously, compared to these outsiders, they were more willing to believe the old apprentice. A complicated expression flashed across the old apprentice's face. How about it? Join the cursing sect and contribute to the construction of a fair kingdom of death. Bai Xiaowen's voice was full of temptation. If you agree to join, the sect will protect your village from the feudal lord's army and guarantee your freedom. You will not become slaves. Moreover, these dozen or so people were originally slaves. I can release them on the spot, Bai Xiaowen added. The dozen or so villagers whose hands were tied with ropes were pleasantly surprised. The old apprentice said hesitantly, "What if they don't join the cursing sect?" Similarly, release. That's because the purpose of our sect is to eliminate injustice. It's unfair for free people to be reduced to slaves, Bai Xiaowen said. The old apprentice continued, "Then why can't you all selflessly protect the villagers of Luminite Village? Why must you all join the cursing sect as a condition?" Bai Xiaowen sneered and said, "Old mister, it's a sin to always think about reaping without sowing. On the land of Silver Star Island, there are so many lambs who are suffering oppression and waiting to be rescued. The cursing sect also needs to recruit more believers. Why should we waste our time and energy on a bunch of non-believers who refuse to join us? I'm willing to become a believer." A crisp voice sounded. The little girl, Sonia, who was being chased by the soldiers just now, squeezed over and looked at Gloria with sparkling eyes. "Great Black Knight, thank you for saving my father from the bad guys. Thank you very much for your virtue." Gloria stood there silently, her pale face expressionless. After a long time, she snorted and turned around. "I'm a believer too. Anyway, my life can't get any worse," Sonia's father, the man whose hands were tied up, sighed and said. As if it was the beginning, voices of people wanting to join the cursing sect rose one after another. At the front were the dozens of slaves with their hands tied up. Behind them, the other villagers of Luminite Village also scrambled to join. Herd mentality was one thing. On the other hand, these people knew that the consequence of not being protected by the cursing sect was to become slaves. Naturally, they had no other choice. "Old mister, how should I address you? Do you want to join us?" Bai Xiaowen stared at the old apprentice. "My name is John. I'm just a useless wizard apprentice. I don't want to." Bai Xiaowen narrowed his eyes and lowered his voice, "Old Mr. John, please consider the consequences of rejecting us." The old apprentice John sighed and said, "I'll join." Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, "Welcome." Inwardly, he was slightly relieved. Most of the villagers of Luminite Village were ignorant. As long as there was profit to be made, they would be easily fooled. However, this old apprentice John was different. At least he had a certain amount of knowledge. Bai Xiaowen estimated that this old apprentice might have already seen through Gloria's identity as an undead. Naturally, he could also guess the nature of this organization based on the teachings of the cursing sect. From the perspective of the hidden hostility of living beings towards undead creatures, it was normal for the old apprentice John to be unwilling to join the cursing sect. However, if he publicly announced that he did not want to join the cursing sect, the other villagers would inevitably be influenced by him. This was something that Bai Xiaowen could not allow, so he used a threatening attitude. The old apprentice John looked like a coward at first glance. In the end, he changed his mind and joined the cursing sect. This was not surprising. The grand initiation ceremony lasted for 2 hours. It had to be said that this ceremony looked very fake, but it had the effect of calming people's hearts. The villagers who were originally uneasy actually felt a sense of security after the initiation ceremony. They felt that there was someone protecting them from above. Of course, the villagers now could not even be considered as believers. Their loyalty was also lacking. "Archbishop, shall we bury the bodies of these crossflower pawns?" A villager took the initiative to ask. "There's no need. Now, Lord Dark Knight, please show all the believers what kind of punishment will befall the enemies of the cursing sect after they die. Bai Xiaowen said loudly. Gloria glanced at Bai Xiaowen and raised the skeletal greatsword. The elite cavalrymen and 10 soldiers that Gloria had killed were all reincarnated into undead creatures under the infusion of the death energy. For a moment, there were cries of agony. The eerie wind blew, and the scene was silent. Bai Xiaowen quickly gained control of this team of newborn undead under Gloria's authority. He immediately ordered these undead creatures to do their work. Drawing water, digging ditches, repairing the thatched huts, under Bai Xiaowen's subtle control, these newborn undead creatures were hard workers. They did not know fatigue and were quite efficient. Of course, the premise was Bai Xiaowen's subtle control. If Gloria was the one controlling them, these unintelligent undead creatures would not be able to do anything at all. Even drawing water from the well was an impossible task. They could only be cannon fodder on the battlefield. Gloria looked at this scene from the side. There was a strange look in her icy blue eyes. I didn't expect Dior's spiritual talent to be so outstanding. He can actually multitask to this extent. Dark Knight Gloria's loyalty to you has increased. Current loyalty level, admire, unchanged. Bai Xiaowen unexpectedly received this notification. However, he did not have time to guess Gloria's thoughts. Instead, he said loudly, "Do you see it? Do you see it? This is the miracle of the cursing sect. These sinners who disobeyed the sect when they were alive will have to do endless hard work after death. They are even more miserable than slaves." The villagers who had just joined the cursing sect looked at this scene with their mouths agape. This had a great impact on their worldview. Some people quickly realized that they seemed to have boarded a pirate ship. The old apprentice John's lips trembled. The so-called miracle could not deceive him. However, he did not dare to say, most of the villagers saw this scene as proof of the extraordinary power of the cursing sect. Archbishop Dior S. Kalebloom's teachings seemed to have become reality. At night, by the seaside. Gloria looked at the surging waves on the seaside and said calmly, "Is it worth it to spend so much energy on such a group of weak humans? Are we going to continue the topic from the day?" Bai Xiaowen said with a smile. "Lady Gloria, do you think it is worth it?" Gloria remained silent. Bai Xiaowen said, "Actually, there is no need to debate anymore. During the day, when you cast the breath of death, you deliberately avoided the dozen or so potential slaves who were with the soldiers. I know that you have approved of my idea." Gloria snorted. "I just wanted to see what kind of tricks you would play, but the result was disappointing. Lady Gloria, what do you want to turn Gloria Village into? A charaba where all the villagers will be killed by you and turned into skeletons. Including the little girl named Sonia?" Bai Xiaowen threw a series of questions at Gloria. Gloria's fingers clenched the hilt of her sword, and the tip of the sword was deeply inserted into the sand. She took a deep breath and said sternly, "As long as it is beneficial to my revenge, I can sacrifice everything. I no longer have such a luxury as conscience." "All right, from the perspective of benefits." Bai Xiaowen sighed and said, "Your transformation ability is based on the strength of the target when they were alive. Those villagers are weak, and when they are turned into skeletons, they are pitifully weak. 10 or 20 skeletons can't even defeat an ordinary soldier. On the battlefield, they are just trash that can be swept away by a flaming tongue spell. They can't even climb up the city walls during a siege. If they are alive, they can create more value for the kingdom of death." Bai Xiaowen continued, "Let's not talk about other things. Your elite undead soldiers will have their weapons worn out, right? Moreover, many reincarnated undead soldiers don't even have armor, so they need a stable rear. You can't count on those unintelligent undead to do such delicate work. Not to mention making weapons, they should be thankful if they even know how to start a fire. If you kill indiscriminately, you will only provoke the resistance of all the humans on Silver Star Island. Even if you conquer Silver Star City, the Kingdom of Death's strength will be greatly depleted. Perhaps you will say that you can turn the dead into undead and use the battle to support the battle. But remember, only the enemies you kill can be transformed. In a large-scale battle, even if you perform exceptionally well, how many can you kill? 100 or 200? The number of undead creatures that die in battle will greatly exceed this number. Even if you can successfully conquer Silver Star Island, kill all the living creatures, and have an army of tens of thousands of ordinary undead creatures, so what? Silver Star Island will become a dead area, and the undead army will become water without a source and a tree without roots. It may seem that they have expanded greatly in a short period of time, but in fact, they have reached their limit and are destined to go downhill. It is simply unrealistic to count on such a small number of soldiers to beat the Usoc in the Lionheart Kingdom. Moreover, the annihilation of the undead will make the Kingdom of Death a mortal enemy in the eyes of all living forces. Bai Xiaowen said a lot in one breath. Gloria listened in silence, and then said coldly, "Your way of doing things may not be any better. Those humans who are forced to join the church will never be on the same side as the undead. It's not the same." Ideology is a terrible weapon, Bai Xiaowen said, shaking his head. The coexistence of living creatures and undead seems absurd, but it is a necessary structure for the Kingdom of Death to form. As long as the believers are brainwashed by the idea of equality in death, they will become extremely loyal. As humans, believers can do many things that the undead can't, such as infiltrating undercover, spying for intelligence, instigating civil strife, distributing leaflets. Gloria snorted. "Your idea is beautiful." "No, this is reality," Bai Xiaowen said with a smile. "I intend to divide believers into 9 levels. Believers who have just joined the church will be the first level, believers who work loyally for the church will be promoted to the second level after a year, and so on. Different privileges can be set for believers of different levels. As for those believers who have made special contributions, a ceremony can be held and they can be accepted as internal core members. How about they be called acolytes? Of course, acolytes will also be divided into different levels, and the lowest level acolytes will have all the privileges of high-level believers." Gloria obviously did not understand the power of this hierarchy. She just shook her head and said, "Aren't you advocating to eliminate injustice? This kind of hierarchy is unfair in itself." No, this kind of corresponding status based on one's own efforts and contributions is a fair performance," Bai Xiaowen said with a smile. "If those who have made meritorious contributions and mediocre people have the same status, then it will be unfair." The elimination of injustice that Bai Xiaowen was talking about was the phenomenon of those who enjoyed a noble status and a lot of resources because of their good reincarnation skills. This phenomenon was especially serious in the Aran Plane world, where there was a noble class. Unless the commoners were gifted and coincidentally became strong, there was no way for them to stand out. As for the children of the noble class, as long as they were not useless, they could at least become elites. As for the differences between the survivors, there was no need to mention it. Li Shi walked over quietly like a cat. "As you expected, the old wizard apprentice named John secretly ran away," Li Shi said. "Well, it doesn't matter if he ran away." Bai Xiaowen shook his head and sighed. "It seems that people with a little knowledge still can't be fooled. The hostility toward the undead forces is still difficult to eliminate. This indirectly proves that it's definitely going to be difficult for us to conquer Silver Star Island." Gloria did not talk much about this topic. An ordinary wizard was at most an ant to her. She suddenly opened her slightly closed eyes. "They're here." The sound of water splashing could be heard. Chapter 659. Under the guidance of Lich Bard, an army of hundreds of elite undead finally set foot on the land of Silver Star Island. "Lady Gloria." Lich Bard half knelt on the ground and expressed his loyalty to Gloria. "This is the first time I've experienced such a crazy journey. There were countless difficulties and obstacles along the way. I defeated the raging ocean currents, bypassed the sea giant's territory, killed the ferocious silverback sharks, and escaped the pursuit of 2 killer whales. Finally, I successfully led these soldiers to your command." "Bai Xiaowen, this guy is really good at talking." Li Shi mercilessly said, "Silverback sharks and killer whales? I can't imagine that they would be interested in a group of skeletons. Lich Bard angrily glared at Li Shi. Enough, Bard. Since we're here, let's get ready to carry out the next phase of the battle plan. Gloria looked at Bai Xiaowen. Report to me after you've discussed the plan. Gloria left with her hips swaying, and a notification sounded. Frowny face hero side mission, Battle of Silver Star Island, activated. Mission objective, assist Gloria in eliminating the organized resistance on Silver Star Island and obtain the actual ruling power of Silver Star Island. Mission difficulty, mission duration, none, equivalent to the remaining time you spend in the air and plane. Mission reward, unknown, it's actually an A-level hero side mission. Li Shi exclaimed. Qiao Rui also rushed over and participated in the team discussion. It's strange. With the strength of the undead army, Gloria, Bard, and the Frost Dragon Syndagosa, it shouldn't be difficult to defeat the Silver Star territory, right? As a large-scale war scene, it's not strange that a hero side mission is given a level, but in terms of the specific difficulty classification, it shouldn't reach A level. Li Shi nodded repeatedly. Yes, the difficulty of our surprise attack on the North County mission is only B level. Bai Xiaowen said in the team channel, there are 3 main difficulties in this mission. First, this is a war between the living race and the undead race, not an ordinary civil war between human cities. In Silver Star City, some neutral powerhouses who were not originally under Lord Aldington will also spontaneously participate in the war. This point can be taken as a reference to Gloria Village. There is a spellcaster living in seclusion in a small village. As the main city of Silver Star Island, Silver Star City must have more than just a few leaders under Lord Aldington. Second, when we launched the surprise attack on the North County, it happened to be the period when the North County's forces were empty. Moreover, the Resistance Army had spies who had been hiding in the North County city for many years. When they were attacking Silver Star City, there was no such thing. They could only attack the city. Looking at the current strength of the undead army and Lord Aldington's army, the undead army is obviously at a disadvantage. Moreover, the undead army is naturally at a disadvantage in a siege battle. Third, the mission of Silver Star Island of Silver Stars is. In other words, we have to unify Silver Star Island and not allow any unstable factors to exist. This will undoubtedly take a lot of time. We only have a week left, and it won't be easy to achieve this goal. After hearing Bai Xiaowen's analysis, Qiao Rui and Li Shi understood and had a more comprehensive understanding of the difficulty of this A-level hero side mission. Qiao Rui smiled and said, although I've lamented a few times, I still can't help but feel that I've really found a powerful backer. I just finished the A+ elite side mission, and now there's an A-level hero side mission. Exploring the spiritual realm was not as exciting as this. Bai Xiaowen narrowed his eyes and did not say anything. The 3 of them had been chatting in the team channel, and Lich Bard was left hanging. The key was that Bard did not know what the White Phoenix team was doing, and he had been giving his suggestions for this war. When the White Phoenix team's internal discussion ended, Bard came to the conclusion. My plan is roughly like this. You can add on, and I'll take it as appropriate and report it to Lady Gloria. Li Shi, oh? Bai Xiaowen, winky-faced Qiao Rui. Asterisk, their expressions made Lich Bard a little stunned. Why, are you looking at me like that? Ahem. Mr. Bard's words are very reasonable. Clap, clap. Bai Xiaowen coughed. Li Shi and Qiao Rui symbolically clapped a few times. Lich Bard was a little embarrassed. He hummed and said, then. Sir Dior, do you have any other suggestions? Seeing that Bai Xiaowen was so tactful, Lich Bard's original intention to stir up trouble dissipated quite a bit, and he asked casually. But Bard soon regretted it. My suggestion? It's very simple. With the powerful strength of the undead army, we can directly charge into Silver Star City and take Lord Aldington's head and present it to Lady Gloria. Bai Xiaowen waved his hand and said in an imposing manner, after taking down Silver Star City, the other areas of Silver Star Island will be easier. Lich Bard felt the veins on his forehead throbbing. Well, this was just a psychological feeling. As a creature of the bone race, Bard had long lost such things as veins. Sir Dior, are you opposing my military plan? Bard hummed and said. He felt like AF** King Dog. Just now, Dior said that what he said was very reasonable. Isn't Mr. Bard's plan to directly attack Silver Star City? Bai Xiaowen was a little surprised. He thought that a prisoner who had been in prison for hundreds of years would be very irritable. My plan is to take down the surrounding villages step by step, kill all the humans there, and quickly expand the scale of the undead army. Finally, gather the army and take over Silver Star City with superior numbers. Bard's face was already half black, if he still had any dignity left. Great, it's a genius idea. I have no reason to oppose it, Bai Xiaowen praised. Then, but I oppose all of it. Bai Xiaowen raised his hand mercilessly. You! Bard almost choked on his breath, if he still had breath. What right do you have to oppose it? You're making a fool out of a powerful lich. Quiet, quiet. Bai Xiaowen waved his hand. Mr. Bard, I have another way of thinking about Silver Star Island. We should rule over the living beings on this land, not turn it into a land of death. Only in this way will Silver Star Island become the headquarters of the undead kingdom. He then explained his idea of forming the cursing sect again. Bard snorted. Naive. Chapter 660. Lich Bard snorted angrily, my proposal is perfect, you're too radical. You're using your influence to bewitch Lady Gloria. Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said, Mr. Bard, you're too conservative, okay? In fact, to be fair, Bard's plan of first occupying the village, accumulating strength, and then finally attacking Silver Star City was very feasible. For the Nation of Death, the chances of winning were also very high. He could be said to be an experienced strategist. However, this strategy still took the old path of killing all the civilians as cannon fodder, which was contrary to Bai Xiaowen's purpose of establishing the cursing sect. Another point was that Bai Xiaowen had a very limited time to do this Battle of Silver Star Island mission. The White Phoenix team only had about a week left in the Aran Plain. This mission had to be completed within a week. If they followed Lich Bard's proposal and slowly accumulated the strength of the undead army, they might not be able to complete the mission in a month, let alone a week. Of course, Bai Xiaowen would not say these reasons out loud. Bard sneered, I'm conservative? Dior Kale Bloom, how long have you lived, and how long have I lived? Don't mistake ignorance for courage, and steadiness for cowardice. Young man, you still have a lot to learn. Bai Xiaowen pursed his lips. Mr. Bard, you've basically been a prisoner for the past few hundred years, right? You're surrounded by unintelligent undead, and your intelligence has obviously deteriorated. You don't understand the way living beings think at all. Your vision is too shallow. The plan to attack Silver Star City is indeed very difficult to succeed for an old guy like you who lacks imagination. However, under my command, taking Silver Star City is as easy as flipping my hand. Remember, this is the difference between you and me in terms of leadership ability and the art of command. I won't accept any rebuttal. Lich Bard was fuming with anger, you're unreasonable. I'll report you to Lady Gloria, arrogant human. When Bai Xiaowen and Lich Bard went to the cottage at the entrance of the village to see Gloria, a small figure darted out like a frightened deer. It was the little girl, Sonia, who almost crashed into Bard's skeleton. Originally, with Bard's spiritual sensing ability, he would have discovered this little girl long ago, but in front of him was Gloria's room. Out of respect for the master, he did not dare to release his spiritual scan, which was why it was so awkward. Bard, who was already filled with anger, saw the little girl's two balls of soul fire fluctuate slightly. His skeletal jaw opened and closed. Reckless little girl. The bone staff in his right hand was faintly flashing with cold energy, and he cast energy absorption. Bai Xiaowen reacted very quickly. With a wave of his hand, the butcher blocked the path of the energy drain spell and ate the basic spell. Then, he swung the giant snake scepter at Bard's head. "You're crazy." Bard was startled and hurriedly retreated. Then, he became furious. "You actually attacked your colleague for a little human girl?" Bai Xiaowen crossed his arms and cast a sidelong glance at Bard. "Behave, Lich. I've killed more than one guy with your strength. Do you still remember Marcus?" "Yes, and a guy named Kale. They're both your cellmates." "You." Bard was like a balloon that had been punctured by a needle, his momentum instantly diminished. He had once seen the process of the White Phoenix team fighting against the dragon descendants in the Tomb of the Giant Dragons, and he was actually very wary of this young human. Otherwise, Bard would have already attacked when a lich was ridiculed like this. "Thank you, Archbishop Dior." The little girl, Sonia, was clearly frightened. After saluting Bai Xiaowen, she ran away like a wisp of smoke. In front of Gloria's door, only the White Phoenix team and Lich Bard were left at daggers drawn. Fortunately, Gloria's voice rang out at this moment. "Come in." Bard had a way out, so he hurriedly answered and pushed the door open. Bai Xiaowen and the other two followed behind. Gloria was sitting on a shabby wooden stool, holding a garland of flowers in her fingers. There were only a few small petals on this garland. It was obviously woven from small wildflowers by the roadside. The small wildflowers that had just been picked were still very fresh, but under the corrosion of the omnipresent death energy from Gloria, the small wildflowers were slowly withering at a speed visible to the naked eye. Hearing the door creak, Gloria gently twisted her fingers, and the withered garland of flowers broke inch by inch like ashes and fell to the ground. "You seem to have come to a conclusion." Gloria's cold voice rang out. "Apologies, Lady Gloria. Our plans are very different, and neither of us can convince the other." Bai Xiaowen shrugged. Bard gloomily relayed the opinions of both of them. As for Bai Xiaowen's proposal, of course, he tried his best to describe it in a slanderous tone. However, Bai Xiaowen was very calm. To be exact, he was confident in his ability to bluff. Even if Gloria had believed Bard at the beginning, he was confident that he could change her mind. Gloria listened quietly, and after Bard finished speaking, she opened her mouth. "Dior, how confident are you in attacking Silver Star City? I need to understand the situation of Silver Star City first. The information collected so far is not enough, so I can only confirm the strength of Silver Star City on the surface." Bai Xiaowen did not boast, and spoke the truth. It's not easy to confirm the powerhouses hidden among the civilians, but if there are no more than 8 commander-level powerhouses, I have more than a 90% chance of winning. On the surface, Silver Star City's standing army was about 2,000 people. As for the powerhouses, there was Lord Aldington, Chief Mage Molo, and City Guard Commander Marat. This information was collected from the villagers of Gloria Village, so Gloria and the others knew about it. Nonsense. Anyone can say that, the Lich Bard muttered. Gloria nodded slightly. "Then we'll prepare for battle according to Dior's plan. After occupying Silver Star City, we'll attack the surrounding villages." "Bard." The Lich Bard quivered. "From now on, Dior has the right to command the undead army. You must fully cooperate with him. If necessary, I will personally take part in the battle. Also, you are not allowed to interfere with Dior's plan to establish the cursing sect." The Lich Bard was silent for a few seconds. "Yes, Master." Bai Xiaowen took the opportunity to say, "Then, Mr. Bard, please promise that you will not intentionally kill any human without my permission." Bai Xiaowen then told Gloria the scene at the door with exaggerated details, and finally said, "Sonia, a girl named Sonia. She and her family are the first batch of believers who voluntarily joined the cursing sect. They are of great significance to the cursing sect, and to the other villagers, they are like a weather vane. If Mr. Bard really kills her, the newly established cursing sect will easily collapse. No one wants to stay in a cursing sect that can take their life at any time." Bard said angrily, "We are undead, and they are living beings. Both sides are natural enemies. Bard, you are not allowed to kill civilians without my permission. This is an order." Defying my will means the end of your soul, Gloria said simply. Yes, Bard said with his head lowered. Gloria's threat was domineering and effective. She stood up. All right, Dior, prepare the battle plan to attack Silver Star City. Bard will assist you. Yes, Bai Xiaowen replied, and left the thatched cottage with Qiao Rui and Li Shui. Bard, however, did not leave immediately. What's wrong? Gloria glanced at the lich. Master, I have some thoughts that I want to report to you. Speak. Make it short. Master, don't you think that the human Dior's Kale Bloom is not trustworthy? Bard said sinisterly. At the end of the day, he is a human. He is not on the same side as us undead creatures. This could be seen from his strategy and his protection of the humans. I feel that he will betray us sooner or later. Why don't we get rid of him as soon as possible to preserve the purity of the undead kingdom? Are you done? Gloria glanced at Bard from the corner of her eyes. Yes. Bard was a little uneasy, not knowing what Gloria was thinking. I understand. You may leave. Gloria waved her hand. Bard could not figure out Gloria's thoughts, so he could only leave quietly. Silver Star City. This ancient city had a history of hundreds of years. It had existed before the Lionheart Empire unified the Aluan continent. Later, the Night Lord Kevin Des conquered the north and gave Silver Star Island to the reclusive Knight Aldington. Until now, the Aldington family had ruled Silver Star Island for more than 300 years. The current Lord of Aldington was a complete lunatic. Bai Xiaowen suspected that he had a high degree of persecutory paranoia. Despite living on Silver Star Island, which was in the middle of nowhere and had a strait as a natural barrier, he still built the main city into a war fortress. On the towering 10-meter-tall city wall, there were ballistae lined up on the battlements on both sides of the gate. Every 10 steps, there would be an arrow tower. There were also armored soldiers of the Crossflower Legion patrolling the city wall. This formation was much tighter than the defense of North County City. Chapter 661. In the shadows at the corner of the city wall, Bai Xiaowen and Qiao Rui opened their eyes one after another. Li Shui, who was standing guard at the side, asked through the team channel, "How is it?" "Wait, let me summarize the information that the Spirit of Falcon observed for you." Qiao Rui reached out and touched Bai Xiaowen's forehead. Just now, Bai Xiaowen and Qiao Rui had started investigating Silver Star City. Qiao Rui was using Spirit Falcon's bird's eye view to observe Silver Star City's military layout, fortress weapons, important buildings, and other information. Bai Xiaowen, on the other hand, was observing the details of Silver Star City's defense through Shadow Assassin's infiltration. Soon, the Shadow Assassin's investigation was completed, and Bai Xiaowen summoned it back. The situation is more or less clear now. Bai Xiaowen said, Silver Star City is divided into 2 districts, the inner and outer. The outer district is surrounded by the inner district in a circular shape. It is mainly inhabited by the poor and proles, as well as some gangs. The inner district is relatively small, and there are 3 known leaders, Lord Aldington, Mage Molo, and Crossflower Commander Marat. The one we need to pay attention to is Crossflower Commander Marat. According to what the Shadow Assassin saw in the tavern in the outer district, Marat is a very powerful barbarian leader. It is said that he is the descendant of giants, and he is also known as half-giant. As for the outer district, there are 2 places we need to pay attention to. One is the Church of Light, where there is a priest called Lawrence. The information is not complete, but he is classified as a leader for the time being. There's also the tavern in the outer city. The sign says Giant's Toe. I took a look at it through the shared vision of the Shadow Assassin. Although I can't see through it, and I can't directly sense the waves of psionic particles, I can tell that there are a few people inside who are suspected to be at the commander level. Of course, they could also be elites. Bai Xiaowen concluded, there should be some hidden forces in Silver Star City that I haven't discovered, but this is not important. I already have a battle plan in mind, but it will require a certain amount of risk. At this moment, in the Lord's Hall in the inner district of Silver Star City. You're saying that there's a problem in Mirage Village? Lord Aldington was a man with sinister eyes and a thin face. He was wearing a military uniform full of medals. At this moment, he was using his vulture-like eyes to stare at the soldier who was in charge of reporting. Yes. Yes, my lord. Captain Cheery and the 10 infantrymen under him are all missing. We also lost contact with a tax official in the Western District. Who dares to go against the great Aldington? Lord Aldington's eyes flashed with anger. A bald old man wearing a red robe knocked on the wooden staff in his hand and said, "It is impossible for the ordinary people of Mirage Village to eliminate an entire troop of soldiers. They don't have the ability to do so. Could it be that the Imperial Army or the USOC have designs on Silver Star Hill?" The red-robed old man who spoke was Mage Imoluo. The Imperial Army and the USOC are at war right now. They don't have the energy to mess with the Silver Star territory, Aldington snorted. At this moment, the soldier who was kneeling raised his hand again in fear and trepidation. "My lord, there's another report. Someone found a dragon in the northwest." Dragon? Aldington thought that he had heard wrongly. Yes, a dragon, flying in the clouds. But it was too fast. Only a few people said that they saw it. Nonsense, dragons have disappeared for hundreds of years, Aldington snorted. Those bumpkins must have seen wrongly. The soldier did not dare to refute. However, Mage Imoluo had a contrary opinion. "My lord, what he said may be true. There's an ancient prophecy in our circle of mages. At the end of the era, dragons will revive, and the warriors of the ancient kings will return." An unreliable prophecy, Aldington snorted. "Well, if there is such a dragon, then we can find the reason why the entire troop of soldiers in Mirage Village was wiped out. Mr. Imoluo, according to your understanding of dragons, will this monster be a threat to Silver Star City?" No, Imoluo was very confident. Dragons are not invincible. Otherwise, there wouldn't be the legend of the Dragon Slayer. Moreover, our city's defense is very strong. If a dragon dares to come, the ballistae on the city wall are not decorations. These heavy weapons are the most suitable to deal with dragons. On the other side, a muscular man who was 2.5 meters tall glared and said, "Murat will tear off the dragon's wings. Twist off the dragon's head." "Ha ha, that's right. With our strong Murat, even if there is a dragon, we have nothing to fear." Lord Aldington laughed, showing an unusual fondness for Murat. Imoluo's mouth twitched. The Lord was really crazy. He actually let a barbarian who was full of muscles and had no military training be the commander of the Crossflower Army. What else could that barbarian do besides being strong? However, Imoluo did not try to persuade him. The reason why he chose to be the chief mage on this desolate Silver Star Island was to pass time. It did not matter if the Lord was crazy or retarded. As long as the Lord paid him on time and did not disturb his research, it was enough. "Lord, what should we do about the Mirage Village?" A municipal official raised his hand and asked. "Those civilians may be living under the shadow of the dragon. Should we send the army to investigate the actual situation and drive away the dragon to protect the people? You want me to sacrifice my precious army for a group of lowly peasants?" Aldington glared and said, "Don't joke around. Maybe the dragon is just passing by and will fly away soon. As for the Mirage Village, let them fend for themselves." At night, the 3 members of the White Phoenix team brought Lich Bard to the city gate of Silver Star City. "Are you clear about the first stage of the infiltration plan?" Bai Xiaowen waved his hand. "Get ready to move." "I know the reason," Lich Bard said, a little annoyed. "But why do you want me to take the risk in your radical plan? If you want to die, can't you do it yourself? This is Lady Gloria's order. I don't need to repeat it, right?" Bai Xiaowen ignored Bard's complaints and pointed at the sleepy sentries standing guard at the city gate. "Come on, Mr. Bard. It's time for you to show your worth." Bard snorted and stretched out a pair of bone claws. He made a casting gesture. Sleep. An invisible mental power spread out. Immediately, the sentries on guard either sat down or leaned against the wall and fell asleep. Liches were experts at manipulating mental power. This group hypnosis spell was indeed useful. However, in actual combat, the sleeping enemies would wake up with a hit. The effect was not so strong. Go! The 10-meter-high city wall was not an obstacle for the awakened ones, even those with mental power. Especially when the soldiers guarding the city were asleep and no one disturbed them. Bai Xiaowen ran up a few steps and stepped on the city wall with the tip of his foot. He jumped up 7 or 8 meters. Li Shui, who was at the side, had already leaped onto the wall. She reached out and pulled Bai Xiaowen up. Then, Qiao Rui did the same and easily climbed up the wall. Why do I, a noble lich, have to do this kind of thing? Lich Bard muttered a few words. His bone claws dug into the cracks in the bricks of the city wall and climbed up bit by bit. Behind him, a small team of carefully selected elite ghosts also floated to the top of the city wall. The infiltration was a success. Bard, take the elite ghosts to destroy the ballistae. You don't need me to teach you what to do, right? Bai Xiaowen said. Lich Bard snorted and said, understood. Isn't it just cutting the strings of the ballistae? Well, after destroying the ballistae, go to the city gate and watch the capstan. Once the signal is received, immediately let the army into the city and destroy the capstan, Bai Xiaowen said. Got it. Although he was unwilling, Bard still knew his priorities. He would not cause trouble for Bai Xiaowen in this kind of official matter. This was also because Bai Xiaowen had a clear division of labor. Bard was in charge of the ballistae and the capstan at the city gate. If there were any mistakes, Bard would not be able to shirk the responsibility. In comparison, Bai Xiaowen and the other two's mission was more important. We'll leave this to Bard. We'll go to the inner city and assassinate an important leader of Silvestar City. Bai Xiaowen said in a low voice. Li Shi grinned and said, kill the boss and pick up the treasure chest. Qiao Rui admired Bai Xiaowen. As an awakened, what was his biggest dream in the spiritual realm? Of course, it was to work for the people in the spiritual realm and reap benefits for himself. Bai Xiaowen gave Bard the task of destroying the city defense equipment and controlling the gate, which were not profitable, while he went to assassinate the leader and pick up the treasure chest. It was not easy to achieve this. The awakened had to have enough influence in the spiritual realm and be eloquent enough to stir up trouble and make the powerful figures in the spiritual realm carry out their will. Of course, if one had a high enough status with a high-end ticket, the difficulty of stirring up trouble would plummet. Needless to say, this was needless to say. There were no new city walls in the inner city. There were only isolated areas, and the patrols were not strict. The White Phoenix team quickly found their first target's house and climbed over the wall. In the brightly lit hall, a muscular man who was 2.5 meters tall was holding a bottle of wine and gulping down large mouthfuls. A strong smell of alcohol emanated from his body. The muscular man's chest was bare, covered only by a simple animal skin. His hair was loose and tied in knots, making him look like a barbarian. Beside him, a tall and thin man who looked like a butler said with a smile, Lord Murat is really brave. No matter on the battlefield or in bed, you are invincible. Murat wiped his mouth and snorted, Murat is not happy. The woman you chose is too weak. Murat broke her neck. He shook his head heavily, looking very dissatisfied. Don't worry, Lord Murat. I will find a more suitable partner for you. The tall and thin man hurriedly promised. He did not want to be like Murat's previous butlers, who had their necks broken by this temperamental barbarian. Meat. Murat wants to eat meat. Murat smashed the large bottle of wine in his hand. Yes. I will ask the kitchen to prepare it. The tall and thin man hurriedly slipped to the entrance of the hall. However, when he came to the entrance of the hall, he bumped into a meat wall. Then, a demonic whisper sounded in his ear, don't bother. You can go to hell. Crack. The butcher twisted his hands and broke the butler's neck. Murat, who was sitting on the northernmost side of the hall, suddenly felt goosebumps all over his body. He stood up abruptly. "Who is it?" Murat smelled an unfamiliar scent. Bang! What answered him was a scorching bullet. The Desert Eagle equipped with a silencer made a muffled sound. Murat reacted quickly. He seemed to have a beast-like instinct and pounced to the side. The shot that was aimed at his vital point hit his waist. The power of the spear was so great that it tore open a wound on Murat's waist. Blood flowed out of the wound. Following the gunshot, the White Phoenix team brought the butcher and stepped into the hall. "What a beast! Perhaps we've chosen the wrong target." Bai Xiaowen shook his head. "But now, we have to shoot the arrow. Let's get rid of this big guy." As he spoke, Bai Xiaowen used his insight to share the information with his teammates. Murat, leader level 8, race, humanoid/human, profession, Bloody Hammer Warrior, attributes, strength 90, agility 31, constitution 42, spirit 18, skill 1, half giant strength, passive. Murat deals extra crushing damage to enemies with smaller strength and body size. The ratio of the extra damage is determined by the difference in strength and body size. The bigger the difference, the higher the ratio of the crushing damage. Skill 2, Crush, passive. Murat's normal attacks have a chance to add a crushing effect, causing damage to the enemy. Skill 3, Bloodthirsty Frenzy. Murat wields the giant hammer with both hands, attacking all targets within the melee range with double agility. This skill can only be activated when Murat's health points are below 30%. Each hit will restore 1% to 10% of Murat's health points. Skill 4, Earthquake. Murat wields the giant hammer to hit the ground after accumulating power, causing the ground nearby to shake violently. All enemies within the area will be in a constant state of imbalance. Skill 5, Giant Bloodline Level 2. Health points are increased by 400. Toughness is increased by 40%. The so-called all brawn and no brains was probably the description of the half-giant Murat in front of them. It was Bai Xiaowen's first time seeing a level 8 leader with 90 strength. He was like a monster. However, 18 spirit was enough to catch a chicken. Perhaps it was because of his low spirit that 2 of Murat's 4 combat skills were passive skills that did not consume his spirit. 18 spirit was definitely enough to cast Earthquake and Bloodthirsty Frenzy. However, it might not be enough to face Bai Xiaowen. Chapter 662. Go to hell, worms. Murat raised his hand and picked up the giant hammer that he usually used from the weapon rack at the side. The shape of the hammer was extremely ferocious. The butcher's giant snake scepter was already a heavy weapon, but it paled in comparison to this giant hammer. Boom! Murat did not have much intelligence. His first attack was aimed at the evil ghost that had been draining his mana. The wind whistled. The hammer did not hit the evil ghost, but it created a huge hole in the wooden floor of the hall. The surrounding wood chips were scattered everywhere, and cracks were everywhere. The power was amazing, but it was useless against the evil ghost. Murat scratched his head. He did not think about the reason and changed his target. He strode toward Bai Xiaowen and swung his second hammer. The butcher strode forward and swung his giant snake scepter vertically. Clang! A deafening sound reverberated and spread rapidly in the night sky. The butcher's body shook violently and took 2 steps back. Fortunately, its body size was not crushed by Murat, or it would have to suffer additional crushing damage. Even if it was not crushed, the recoil damage from the butcher's attack was not light, and its HP was reduced by a lot. Fortunately, the decay skill was activated. After the butcher dealt poison damage to Murat, the damage reduction effect was triggered. It waved its giant snake scepter and only defended, trying its best not to lose Murat's close-range choke. Fortunately, the butcher's large summon creature could barely hold its position. Even if it was knocked back, it was not too far away. It could intercept the slowed Murat again with 1 step. If it was a tank-type awaken, even if it was a hero class, it would probably be knocked back far away and fail the choke. Let's end this quickly. Bai Xiaowen raised his hand. The Wrathclaw, Skeleton Warrior, and Delifa the Banshee appeared and surrounded Marat. The Wrathclaw immediately activated its howl skill. Delifa waved her hand and an invisible shadow was drawn out from Marat's body. Then, Delifa crushed it with a bang. Damn woman! Marat did not recognize Delifa as a banshee and roared angrily. He could feel that his strength had dropped by a notch. This was the effect of Delifa's skill, soul extraction. It could reduce all of Marat's attributes by 4 points and reduce his movement speed by 20%. Qiao Rui raised his soul bamboo flute and began to play a soul rhythm to reduce Marat's attributes. 5 seconds later, Marat's body was stacked with 5 layers of weaken effect. All of his attributes had been reduced by 25%. It was worth mentioning that the percentage reduction of weakness and the fixed reduction of soul extraction from Delifa were calculated first before calculating the percentage reduction. As a result, the 90 points of strength that Marat was proud of had been reduced to less than 65 points. His threat level was greatly reduced. Its agility had also been reduced. Its attack speed, which was already low to begin with, was now pitifully low. Even the butcher, who was under Bai Xiaowen's control, could easily dodge his giant hammer. The most pitiful one was the spirit attribute. After the double reduction of 18 points of spirit, it was left with less than 10 points. Together with Evil Ghost's grudge mana drain, Marat's spirit was reduced to less than 2 points in just a few seconds. There was also a theoretical 5 seconds of stun, 3 seconds in reality. This was the strength of the newly formed White Phoenix team. As long as Qiao Rui's spirit was enough to support the soul rhythm, even a violent boss with 90 points of strength would not be able to withstand a single blow. This was also one of the reasons why Bai Xiaowen was confident in challenging the Lord. Unfortunately, Qiao Rui's soul rhythm could not last long. It soon stopped and joined in the attack. After a round of attacks, Marat's HP had been reduced to less than half. He shook his head and woke up. He roared angrily, "Marat will crush you." Buzz. The giant hammer smashed down. However, Marat was still under the effect of the soul rhythm. The hammer seemed powerful, but it was blocked by the butcher without any hesitation. The butcher even had time to charge up and hit Marat's head hard. Bang! Marat was hit. His neck was almost fractured and sprained. Blood was flowing out from his temples. The skeleton warrior behind him had already charged up its sword and slashed down. It left a terrible wound on Marat's back. Suddenly, Marat felt his body become lighter. The feeling of being suppressed and powerless disappeared. 90 points of strength were back in his body. Marat will crush you. With another roar, Marat's body emitted a bloody light. His HP had been reduced to less than 1/3. He was ready to use the bloodthirsty frenzy skill. However, there was no reaction. Marat was still in a state of paralysis. How stupid. You don't even know that your spirit is not enough. Bai Xiaowen shook his head. Although this boss was very violent and deadly to many metahumans, the evil ghost happened to be its nemesis. The summoned creatures attacked one after another. Li Shi's 2 swords were as fast as lightning. They kept creating wounds on Marat's back. With a plop, Marat's body collapsed like a collapsing mountain. Great! Fighting this level 8 boss is much easier than before. Li Shi reached out and picked up the treasure chest. With the addition of Sister Qiao, our team's strength has become stronger. The corresponding battle score has also decreased. Bai Xiaowen said, "Let's go. We'll open the treasure chest on the way." The fight just now caused quite a commotion. Someone will be here soon. It only took a few minutes to kill Marat. Bai Xiaowen recalled the summoned creatures. The White Phoenix team quietly sneaked out of Marat's mansion. With the perception of 2 metahumans who specialized in spirit, the team easily avoided the patrolling guards. They were not discovered by anyone. Marat, the commander of the Crossflower Army, first target completed. In a secluded place in the inner city, the 3 of them sat down and rested. They took out the filtered Nile River water for Qiao Rui to drink. When they were recovering, Bai Xiaowen said slowly. But I think we might have chosen the wrong target. Murat doesn't look like a wise commander. It's meaningless to kill him. But considering the effect of a brave general on morale on the battlefield, it's not a bad deal. What about the next target? Li Shui asked. Bai Xiaowen said, let's go back to the Church of Light in the outer city and find out the background of Father Lawrence. If there's a threat, we'll kill him. From their standpoint, the priest of the Church of Light is the enemy of the undead army. Once the siege starts, he will definitely participate in the battle against the undead army. Divine spells also have a restraining effect on the undead. Chapter 663. You have received equipment, Wrath of the Half-Giant. You have received equipment, Cloak of the Beast Spirit. As a level 8 leader, the White Phoenix squad's score for killing Murat was still B, and they had 2 chances to draw. This time, Bai Xiaowen had casually drawn 2 pieces of gold-tier equipment without any metaphysical elements. It was truly a pleasant surprise. Wrath of the Half-Giant, bound after pickup, quality, hero, gold, equipment position, finger, equipment requirements, 25 strength, 25 constitution, attributes, +5 strength, -2 spirit, additional skills, crush, passive, your melee physical attacks deal additional physical damage. The value is equal to the difference between your strength and the target's. The minimum damage is 3. Durability description: in the ancient giant tribe, the weak had no right to survive. From the requirements, this equipment should be used by tank-type professions with both strength and constitution. Of course, if a violent warrior's constitution met the requirements, it would be more suitable for the equipment's special effect. However, Bai Xiaowen assigned this equipment to Li Shui. Although Li Shui did not meet the equipment requirements, the bone-tooth necklace could make up for some of the basic attributes. After reaching level 7, his strength and constitution would increase, which would definitely meet the equipment requirements. Everything would give way to Li Shui's hero trial, and Li Shui's ring slot was indeed empty. Li Shui felt a little embarrassed. After Qiao Rui joined the White Phoenix squad, she seemed to have been assigned the most equipment. Qiao Rui did not have any decent gains until now. However, Qiao Rui did not express any dissatisfaction. Instead, she took the initiative to persuade Li Shui to take the gold equipment. As a support for a hero class, Qiao Rui's vision was undoubtedly strong. She looked at the future. Once Li Shui succeeded in leveling up, it would be a great improvement for the White Phoenix squad. Not to mention, this equipment was only suitable for Li Shui. The second piece of gold equipment was the Beast Spirit Cloak. It did not have any additional attributes, but it had a rare shield recovery type skill, Beast Spirit Protection. Beast Spirit Protection grants the protection of the Black Tortoise upon activation. Absorbs 120 incoming damage or disappears after 5 seconds. During the duration of Shield of the Black Tortoise, all of the mental energy you expend will be converted into healing effects that will double your HP cooldown, 24 hours. This skill had a pretty good life-saving ability, so Bai Xiaowen directly assigned it to Qiao Rui. Without a doubt, Qiao Rui was the most suitable person to use this equipment to its fullest potential. Her soul rhythm skill consumed a lot of mana, and as a top-tier support, she was the quickest target for the enemy. Qiao Rui had always relied on his class skill, Spirit Walk, to protect himself. Although the skill was useful, it consumed too much mana, which was a huge conflict with his soul rhythm. With this Beast Spirit Cloak, it would be much more difficult for the enemy to rush in and kill Qiao Rui. First of all, the 120-point shield, class level *20, was quite thick. It could absorb a critical damage skill. The enemy could wait for 5 seconds for the shield to disappear, but during these 5 seconds, the mental energy Qiao Rui expended would automatically be converted into healing effects. It was a dilemma for the enemy. In the few days after Qiao Rui joined the party, Bai Xiaowen had a rough idea of her equipment. Qiao Rui's equipment was mainly gold equipment, with a few top-tier blue equipment as support. Among them, most of the gold equipment were standard equipment that did not contain any special skills. Basically, they could only be exchanged with merit points. These standard gold equipment did have a lot of additional attributes, but the fact that they did not have any special skills meant that they lacked adaptability. In terms of evaluation, they were definitely not as good as the top-tier gold equipment dropped by the boss. However, this was the situation for most hero job classes. Since the dimensional worlds they were assigned to were generally 2 levels higher than the Awakened themselves, it was extremely difficult and dangerous for the hero job class to kill the dimensional world's leader during an exploration of the spirit world. Only when several hero job classes worked together would there be such an opportunity and room for error. However, if hero classes wanted to form a party, unless they had a rare permanent party creation item, it was too expensive to rely on mana points to form a party. The standard for hero classes to form a party with mana points was 4,000 * the class level of the party member. It was fine once in a while, but not many people could afford to be so extravagant. According to Xiao Rui, she used to form a temporary party with 2 military elites. To be precise, the 2 of them were escorting Xiao Rui. The loot from every exploration of the spirit world was distributed to Xiao Rui first, especially the faction merit points from completing missions. All of them were given to Xiao Rui. Xiao Rui had to rely on the faction merit points to exchange for a full set of standard gold equipment. This was also a common practice for large organizations to nurture young people with potential. Xiao Rui liked this beast spirit cloak very much. In addition, Li Shi had the radiant cloak, and Bai Xiaowen had the commander's cloak. They were all top-tier gold equipment. There was no need to exchange them. Therefore, she accepted without any hesitation. The 3 of them sneaked all the way to the outer city. At this time, a shrill whistle was heard from the half-giant Marat's mansion in the inner city. Apparently, Marat's body had been found. The battle with Marat was a little too loud. His reaction was faster than I expected. "Let's send the signal," Bai Xiaowen said. Li Shi nodded and tore open a scroll. This was a small item carved by the Lich Bard. It was similar to an arcane beacon spell. After tearing open the scroll, a blazing red light shot into the sky and exploded in the night sky. Bai Xiaowen's plan was to kill a boss in the inner city and go straight to the outer city. As the palace where Aldington lived was heavily guarded, it was too risky to sneak in. Therefore, he settled for the second best choice. Between the mage Molo and the commander of the army, Marat, he chose the latter. Church of Light. Father Lawrence woke up from his sleep. He saw a flash of red light outside the window. He quickly got up and walked to the main hall of the church. Several believers who were being treated for their illnesses asked, "Father, what happened?" There was a lot of noise. There were shadows outside the window, and from time to time, there were shouts of enemy attack. Father Lawrence did not have time to answer the believers' questions. He pushed open the main door of the church and looked towards the northwest. That was where the shouts came from. A few believers followed him. Roar! Under the moonlight, a huge black shadow could be vaguely seen flying over the sky of Sylvestar City. It then circled and disappeared. The Lord of Light. What kind of monster is that? A believer stammered. Dragon? I actually saw a dragon. Father Lawrence quickly flipped open the codex in his hand. He could feel that his codex was slightly hot. His face was unprecedentedly solemn. I'm afraid it's not a dragon. It's an evil existence. The North Gate seems to have been attacked by an unknown evil monster. You guys go back first. I want to take a look. Chapter 664. Father Lawrence abruptly turned around. The sound came from the shadows of the church's side pillars. 3 people walked out of the shadows. It was the White Phoenix squad. Who are you? Are you the accomplices of the evil monster that attacked the door? Father Lawrence shouted. Bai Xiaowen narrowed his eyes. It's a bit surprising. It's actually not a leader. He was referring to Father Lawrence's template. To be safe, Bai Xiaowen deliberately used insight, but the result of insight was the same as Bai Xiaowen's perception. Father Lawrence of the Church of Light was actually only an elite. Of course, his attributes were stronger than normal elites. He was considered a rare elite, but so what? Now that he was not a leader monster, it was very difficult for the White Phoenix squad to see him. As for the few normal template believers, they were directly ignored. Forget it. An elite can't do much. Let's hurry up and go to the Giant's Toe Tavern, Bai Xiaowen said. Li Shi and Qiao Rui nodded at the same time. The three were just about to leave when Father Lawrence stopped them. Stop. You still haven't answered my question. Father Lawrence flipped open the codex in his hand and quickly made a casting gesture. One more step and I'll attack. Bai Xiaowen sighed and raised his hand. Whoosh. 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 The three skeleton sword shield bearers and the skeleton warrior surrounded Father Lawrence in a cross formation. The skeleton sword shield bearers used shield bash to interrupt the spell, while the skeleton warrior raised its greatsword and slashed down. Father Lawrence clearly did not see the difference between the two sides. A high template could sense the strength of a low template, but the reverse was very difficult. Father Lawrence could not sense the strength of Bai Xiaowen and Qiao Rui, but he could sense the strength of Li Shi, a level 6 elite. He thought that the three of them were about the same level, so he ended up in a tragedy. A few believers panicked as they watched Father Lawrence fall, blood flowing out. They screamed and ran back to the main hall of the church. Not good. The priest was killed. Help! Bai Xiaowen was surprised to find a silver treasure chest on top of Father Lawrence's corpse. The skeleton warrior reached out and picked up the treasure chest. Bai Xiaowen immediately recalled it, and the silver treasure chest automatically moved into Bai Xiaowen's inventory. Let's go and open the treasure chest on the way, Qiao Rui said. Bai Xiaowen frowned and shook his head. Let's go inside the church and take a look. Why? Li Shi was confused. There's something wrong with the escape route of the believers, Bai Xiaowen said. Normal people, after seeing that I can easily kill Father Lawrence, should try to run to the place where they can escape. This chapel has no back door, which is equivalent to a dead end. Aren't they looking for death if they run in? The most likely explanation is that they subconsciously believe that the church has the power to protect them. Of course, he could not rule out the possibility that some people ran into the church to hide, and others followed the trend. However, Bai Xiaowen felt that it was acceptable to waste some time to find out what was wrong with the church. In his plan, the leader of the Church of Holy Light in the outskirts of the city was likely to be skilled in holy light magic. He had to take care of them first. The leader of the Giant's Toe Tavern could come later. As soon as the White Phoenix team stepped into the main hall of the church, a group of monks ran out from the side rooms without much effort. These monks were generally dressed in hemp robes and barefoot. Their half-exposed chests had a bronze luster. They were a group of elite monks. At the front of this group of elite monks were two men, one tall and one short. They held steel staffs in their hands. Their eyes shone faintly. They looked unusual. The psionic waves they emitted were more powerful. They were obviously leaders. Bai Xiaowen was slightly surprised. He did not expect such a strong force to be hidden in this small church on Silver Star Island. 2 level 7 leaders and a group of elites. Seeing Bai Xiaowen's accurate judgment, Li Shi was used to it. However, this was the first time Qiao Rui had seen it. The shock in her heart was indescribable. She looked at Bai Xiaowen with some admiration. At this time, Bai Xiaowen had already seen through the information of the two monks and shared it with the team. The tall monk was called Sanger. The short monk was called Pras. Of the 3 combat skills of the elite monks, one was called Ascetic Body. Almost every monk had it. It was a rather powerful defensive skill. The other skills differed from person to person. Some were healing and some were melee attacks. However, Bai Xiaowen noticed that they did not have any magic attack abilities. Looking at the steel staffs in their hands, he knew that they were a group of rough gays. As for the two leaders, Sanger and Praz, they were, of course, much stronger than these elite monks. First of all, they had the enhanced version of ascetic body. Sanger was a strength-type melee profession, while Praz was an agility type. If they were paired with Father Lawrence, a spiritual-type rare elite, the Church of Light would definitely be a tough nut to crack. Intruder. You will pay for your crimes. Since their own Father Lawrence had already been killed, this group of ascetics did not say much. After the tall and burly Sanger cursed out loud, he immediately leaped into the air and crashed into the White Phoenix party like a deity descending from the heavens. Combat skill, leap of faith. As Bai Xiaowen had foreseen this in advance, the three of them split up in time and were not directly stepped on by the leap of faith. However, after Sanger landed, the power of light burst forth from his body. A circle of light spread out and slowed the three of them at the same time. Sanger waved his steel staff and activated Divine Strike. A layer of light wandered on the surface of the steel staff. This skill could deal additional holy damage in addition to physical damage. It was the nemesis of undead creatures. Bai Xiaowen raised his hand and summoned the Wrath Claw. Against an enemy with holy damage, he could only rely on the Wrath Claw as the main force and summon other creatures to fight together. The Wrath Claw had less than 30 points of strength. It could not fight Sanger head-on. Fortunately, its 44 points of agility was higher than Sanger. Using guerrilla tactics, with Qiao Rui's soul rhythm and the necromancer's lightning spell support, there was no danger for the time being. The butcher took on the encirclement of the elite ascetics. Although some of the elite ascetics also had holy attribute damage similar to Divine Strike, they were basically melee fighters, which meant that the butcher's rotting toxin would reduce their damage. The only problem was that these monks were too tough. If he could not kill them quickly and trigger the butcher's slaughterhouse passive, the butcher's HP would not be replenished. Fortunately, the butcher's constitution was now as high as 48 points, and his HP was close to 1,000. He had no problem holding on for a while. Most of Bai Xiaowen's attention was focused on the other leader of the monks, the short Praz. After the battle broke out, Praz was blocked by two skeletal sword shielders. Weakened by soul rhythm, Praz, whose strength was not high to begin with, did not have an advantage over the skeletal sword shielders. However, Praz's agility still had an overwhelming advantage. He separated his hands, and the steel staff in his hands suddenly split into two. A sharp blade popped out from the tip and turned into two strangely shaped long straight knives. The straight knives clashed with the scimitars of the skeletal sword shielders, producing a sharp sound. Then, Praz used the recoil force to attack the skeletal sword shielder's lower body. Combat skill, Radiant Blade Slash. The sound of the air being torn apart was like silk. Multiple consecutive holy damage slashes directly cut off the skeletal legs of the two skeletal sword shielders. Although the damage was not enough to kill the skeletal sword shielders, it made the two summoned creatures lose their mobility and their combat ability was basically zero. Praz stepped forward and disappeared in place as if he had teleported. The next second, he crossed a distance of 7 to 8 meters and appeared beside the Wrath Claw. The two straight knives, one horizontal and one vertical, drew two cross lights. Combat skill, Holy Cross Slash. Praz's attack was very fast. Bai Xiaowen knew that he was going to use this move, but he did not have time to control the Wrath Claw to dodge and was hit directly. A miserable cross-shaped wound appeared on the side of the Wrath Claw. Blood flowed out, but it was evaporated by the purifying power of light. It had taken an extremely high amount of damage. The actual damage of this attack was close to 200 points. Considering that Praz still had the stacks of weakness on him, this boss's damage output was really shocking. Fortunately, the Wrath Claw had life sharing to share the damage. Not only did the injury not cause its health to drop to the critical level, but it also made it even more berserk. Its eyes were filled with a bloody aura. Bite and Ren were continuously used, but they did not care about Praz. Their target was still the strength-type boss, Sanger. A well-timed lightning strike interrupted Sanger's parry, causing him to take the damage of these two small skills. Ren even triggered a critical hit, causing severe bleeding. Sanger roared in pain. Immediately, an elite monk raised his hand and tried to cast a long-range healing divine spell. However, the elite monk had just raised his hand when he was caught in a surprise by the undead fiend Arcane Master's Path of Ghosts and entered a stunned state. Xiao Rui withdrew his thoughts of activating Mind Cage and was amazed. Bai Xiaowen's mental power controlled the entire situation and could always use the appropriate skills at the crucial moment. It made an originally complicated battle become abnormally simple. Prez saw that the Wrath Claw was ignoring him. He snorted heavily and slashed out with his two blades like snowflakes. He had already seen that this giant wolf was the key to the battle. Without it holding back, Sanger could be freed. However, Prez's attack was halfway through when a chill came from the back of his head. He stopped abruptly and rolled to the side. Whoosh, a spiritual spear missed and did not lose momentum. Instead, it stabbed towards the Wrath Claw. Originally, when this kind of attack missed, the attacker would be temporarily stunned. In the style of wuxia, it was a different matter. However, the attacker was Delifa, so it was a different matter. The Soulcatcher Banshee flapped her wings and the spiritual spear spun 180 degrees in the air. The shaft of the spear lightly tapped the Wrath Claw's back. The strength of this tap was very light and would only cause insignificant single-digit damage. However, Delifa only needed a little bit of leverage to have room to maneuver. She flapped her wings and pointed the spiritual spear at Praz again. It whistled towards the opponent's throat. Praz was shocked. Just from this reaction, he could tell that the Banshee in front of him was a strong enemy. Although she only had the aura of an elite template. He did not dodge. A layer of bronze suddenly covered the surface of his body. As his two blades spun, a blazing holy storm swept out. Delifa was at a disadvantage because her skills were inferior. The spiritual spear accurately hit Prez's throat, but because the opponent had activated the active effect of the Body of Penance, the damage was greatly reduced and the damage was negligible. However, Delifa was swept up in the holy storm and kept receiving waves of holy damage with the exorcism bonus. Boom! The skeleton warrior waved its greatsword and rushed forward. The whirlwind slash forced Praz back. Delifa was finally able to get away, but she was not afraid at all. She flapped her wings and chased after him. The spiritual spear stabbed out again and surrounded Praz with the skeleton warrior. The skeleton warrior's strength was enough to make Praz dodge and hit, and Delifa restrained it in terms of skills. During the cooldown period of the Holy Storm skill, Praz was completely unable to get away and was completely frozen. On the other side of the battlefield, Li Shi weaved through the crowd like a fairy. She specifically targeted the enemies whose resistance and HP had been reduced by the butcher's rotten poison. She killed one of them with just 2 or 3 strikes. She even triggered a critical hit plus vital strike to instantly kill them. The butcher's slaughterhouse passive was triggered continuously, and his HP, which had dropped to half, slowly rose. After the elite monks fell one after another, the 2 monks' leaders could not escape the fate of being surrounded and killed one after another, leaving only 2 golden treasure chests. Bai Xiaowen breathed a sigh of relief. Done. Without this group of ascetics disrupting the situation, the siege would be much easier to fight. Let's leave quickly before the Silverstar City's city guards arrive. This was also Bai Xiaowen's reasonable plan for the night attack. They would first go to the inner city to cause trouble, then immediately go to the outer city after killing the Crossflower commander, Murat, and then destroy the Church of Light. At this time, the city guards' patrols were rushing to Murat's mansion in the inner city. It would be too late by the time they received news of the Church of Light. As soon as the White Phoenix team left the Church of Light, there were sounds of footsteps on the street. Teams of Silverstar City soldiers ran across the street. The 3 of them hid in a corner and had a mental shield, so they were not discovered. The city guards have such fast reaction speed. Bai Xiaowen rubbed his temples tiredly and said in the team channel, "Just as I thought, it seems that the half-giant Murat we killed is only a nominal commander in Aldington's army." The real commander is someone else. Lord Aldington isn't a complete lunatic. Are we still going to the tavern now? Li Shi asked. Chapter 665. Along the way, the White Phoenix team encountered some detachments of the Silver Star City Guards, and battles broke out frequently. Fortunately, most of the enemy commander's attention was attracted by the undead army that had entered the city. Although the search for the assassins in the city was ongoing, it was not intense enough, and the battles the White Phoenix team encountered were not intense. They did not even have time to open the treasure chests. With the Butcher as the leader, the White Phoenix team killed their way out. As the enemies around them died, the Butcher's health points were slowly recovering. It was worth mentioning that Xiao Rui's mind power was also slowly recovering with the deaths around him. When they reached the battlefield where the undead army and the Silver Star City Guards were fighting, Xiao Rui's mind power had already recovered to 40 points. Xiao Rui's soul whispers recovered mind power. It was a passive effect, similar to the Butcher's slaughterhouse. There were two differences. First, the Butcher's mind power would only recover when enemies in close range died, but Xiao Rui's soul whispers could recover mind power regardless of whether the enemy or ally died. Second, Xiao Rui's soul whispers covered a much larger area than the slaughterhouse. The coverage was equivalent to Xiao Rui's mind power, unit, meter. Along the way, Bai Xiaowen caught an old soldier and used a bewitching charm to control him and read his memory fragments. Bai Xiaowen had a deeper understanding of Silver Star City. The undead army and the Silver Star City Guards battle lines were intertwined. They had entered a fierce melee. Lich Bard was riding on a skeletal warhorse that he had gotten from somewhere. He waved the bone staff in his hand to buff the undead army while also acting as the commander. Through magic amplification, the Lich's eerie voice reverberated in the air. Break through their defense line. Flatten the Lord's mansion and kill them all. Bai Xiaowen quickly rushed to the undead army's side. What are you doing? Why are you going to the inner city? Lich Bard rode on the skeletal warhorse and looked down on them. After attacking the Lord's mansion and killing Lord Aldington, the enemy's morale will collapse. Attack the leader first. I don't need to teach you this, right? Stubborn and rigid. Bai Xiaowen snorted and resisted the urge to kick the Lich Bard off the skeleton horse. The Lord's mansion in the inner city is heavily guarded. Even if Aldington is weak, he can't kill him in a short time. Besides, he's a powerful leader. When the undead army is fighting to the death in the Liege's mansion, the city guards will surround you and burst your ass. Your stupidity may lead to the failure of this battle. Bai Xiaowen scolded the Lich Bard until he was speechless. He then said briefly, "Now, I'm in command. Everyone, turn to the right. Our target is the barracks in the outer city." There's no way the undead army will be commanded by a human. Stop dreaming, Bard said unhappily. Roar! With a roar, the ice blast Wyrm Syndagosa swooped down, and its cold breath that was full of death energy froze the dozen or so Silver Star City soldiers blocking the right intersection into ice sculptures. Gloria, who was standing on the dragon's head, raised her hand and waved her skeletal sword. The dozen or so ice sculptures roared and turned into undead creatures. She glanced coldly at Bard and Bai Xiaowen, and this gaze made Bard's heart tremble. Do as Dior says. After Gloria said this, the ice blast Wyrm Syndagosa flapped its skeletal wings and soared into the sky again. Its cold breath needed a few minutes to recharge. Instead of staying on the ground to fight the enemy and take damage, it would be better to fly in the air and wait for the cold breath to be fully recharged before using it again. In a situation where the defensive armaments, mainly the ballistae, were destroyed, a dragon, even if it was an undead skeletal dragon, could freely hover in the sky above the battlefield. The shadow of its wings covered the sky, and it was a fatal blow to the enemy's morale. There was nothing the Silver Star City Guards could do against Syndagosa. Bai Xiaowen took over the command and quickly connected with the elite undead creatures with his mental power. He divided the hundreds of undead creatures into 600-man teams, reorganized the formation, and rushed toward the intersection opened by Gloria on the right. The spider demons were protected in the center and used their spit to attack. The skeletal soldiers charged in front, the ghosts protected the flanks, and the White Phoenix squad and Lich Bard followed closely behind. After Bai Xiaowen took over the command, he squeezed the scattered undead army into a hole in the blink of an eye. According to the veteran's memory, the real commander of the city guards, Trafford, who was nominally the adjutant of the half-giant Marat, was in the barracks at the moment. This commander constantly listened to the reports of the scouts in various areas and sent messengers to convey his new orders. He began to methodically assemble the superior forces and prepare to annihilate the undead army in one fell swoop. When he heard that the undead army had changed direction and was charging toward the street where the barracks were located, Commander Trafford quickly mobilized the troops in the nearby streets to intercept them. At the same time, the troops in other areas outflanked the undead army from the rear and blocked their way back. The undead army encountered a tenacious resistance, but this was not a regular war, but a special battlefield with super-strong players. The Silver Star City Guards had just assembled 300-man teams to intercept them when they were destroyed by Syndagosa's Cold Breath and Gloria's Breath of Death special skill. Then, the cursed blade pulled up hundreds of skeletal soldiers. The remaining Silver Star City soldiers began to flee. Bai Xiaowen suppressed the undead creature's desire to kill and did not chase after the fleeing soldiers. He led the army straight into the Silver Star City barracks. After seeing Commander Trafford, Bai Xiaowen understood why this excellent soldier didn't become the commander-in-chief. The reason was that he was only an elite with mediocre attributes, not even a rare elite. Without their commander, the Silver Star City Guards, although there were many of them, had become a sheet of loose sand. Under the command of Bai Xiaowen, the undead army broke out with amazing cooperative fighting ability. Teams of undead soldiers divided and disintegrated the enemy's formation, and carried out the annihilation in an orderly manner. Like a high-speed precision machine, they continuously strangled the Silver Star City soldiers. Occasionally, there were tough bones that did not even need the White Phoenix team to take action. Syndagosa and Gloria swooped down from the sky and let the enemy know what a death bombing was. The Silver Star City soldiers fled continuously, but still, no one took the initiative to throw down their weapons and surrender. If it had been a human army invading, perhaps these soldiers would have already disarmed. Bai Xiaowen was too lazy to shout slogans like "surrender your weapons and don't kill," as few people would believe him. Chapter 666. The market town in the southeast was considered a trade zone in the outer city of Silverstar City. There were many shops, and it was relatively prosperous. Bai Xiaowen ordered a few hundred-man teams of the undead army to enter the streets in batches and eliminate the remaining enemy forces. He and the White Phoenix team led 200-man teams to the Giant's Toe Tavern in the trade zone. Bai Xiaowen had no intention of taking all the high-level bosses in the tavern for himself. They were currently in the middle of a fierce battle, so there was no time or space for the White Phoenix party to surround and kill the bosses. Especially since Bai Xiaowen was the brain of the undead army, he had to issue several orders every second to command the undead army. Only then could he command the undead army with ease. He also did not have the leisure to fight the bosses for equipment. The 200-man teams of the undead were used to surround and beat up the bosses. Bai Xiaowen charged to the entrance of the Giant's Toe Tavern. He ordered a fire, and the blazing flames spread rapidly. This move immediately forced the adventurers hiding inside, along with the tavern owner and waiters, to come out. The 100-man teams of the undead flanked them from both sides, and the disheveled adventurers complained incessantly. Suddenly, a tall man in full armor rushed out from the crowd. He roared and swung his axe, killing 2 elite undead in succession. This was a level 7 leader. Bai Xiaowen scanned him with insight. The tall armored man's name was Alfonso the Unyielding. Evidently, the Unyielding was his nickname. Many adventurers who had already made a name for themselves had corresponding nicknames. Bai Xiaowen fired a shot, and the special effect of Absalon's Blood Essence Stone was triggered. Alfonso the Unyielding's health points plummeted, and he howled in pain. A group of skeleton soldiers surrounded him, and the elite spider demons on the periphery continuously attacked. Although the undead army's attacks would reduce the value of the loot, and they might not even be able to obtain the treasure chests, Bai Xiaowen was in a hurry. He could not lose the big picture for the small gains. The A-rank hero mission was of the utmost importance. On the other side, a metal whirlwind rushed out. A skinny man in leather armor with blades all over his body took down 7 or 8 zombies along the way, and his figure suddenly disappeared. Bai Xiaowen snorted and raised his hand to summon a skeleton swordsman behind him. Almost at the same time, the skinny, leather-armored man appeared in the shadow behind him. He swung his dagger horizontally, but only managed to cut off a handful of bone fragments from the skeletal shield-bearer. This was another leader-class expert called Throat Cutter Mengsk. He was an assassin. Mengsk the Throat Cutter's attack did not hit its target. He quickly scattered a cloud of powder and disappeared again. But in the next second, he was knocked out of his true form by the elite undead that surrounded him. Agility-type champions did not have much room to display their abilities in such a densely packed large-scale battlefield, especially for stealth-type assassins. Being stealth-type assassins did not mean that they could ignore the impact of collisions. Of course, if one's agility was ridiculously high, such as the vampire Grand Monarch at night, then it was a different story. Butcher strode over and activated his decaying toxin, causing Throat Slitter Mengsk to receive damage from Bai Xiaowen. Bai Xiaowen was not after the treasure chest. To him, obtaining the soul essence of the leader after his death was more than enough. In fact, the number of adventurers and the defeated soldiers of Silverstar City combined was not inferior to the undead army. But the morale of the defeated soldiers was already low. The adventurers and mercenaries were only good at fighting alone, and were not good at fighting in groups. They could only be defeated by the undead army under Bai Xiaowen's command. Seeing the adventurers fall one by one, and the 2 leaders also suffered some damage, they suddenly had the idea of retreating. Alfonso the Unyielding activated his heroic leap, and Throat Cutter Mengsk used his shadow step. They jumped out of the encirclement at almost the same time. Along the way, they chopped down the undead and even the defeated soldiers blocking their way and rushed towards the eastern wall. "Should we keep them?" Li Shi asked. Bai Xiaowen was just about to use his deterrence when he suddenly squinted his eyes and waved his hand. "Let them go. There's trouble on the other side of the street. We have to go there immediately." A large number of elite undead soldiers participated in the siege. Even if these 2 leaders were killed, there would not be much benefit. Moreover, to kill them, the price that the White Phoenix team had to pay, this referred to the cost of mental strength, skill cooldowns, and so on, was not proportional to the benefits. On the other side of the street, there was a blacksmith shop called Black Anvil. It looked ordinary, but in front of the shop, there were more than 20 undead soldiers lying on the ground. A short and stout blacksmith, who looked like an old tree stump, was holding a red-hot steel drill in his left hand and a one-handed hammer that was spitting sparks in his right hand. Beside the old blacksmith were 2 young men who were pale with fright. They were also wearing blacksmith's fireproof apron, and seemed to be the old blacksmith's apprentices. "Mr. Gurumani, let's run," the 2 young apprentices said, trembling in fear. The old blacksmith ignored the apprentices and blocked the path of the defeated soldiers of Silverstar City. A thunderous roar sounded. "Don't you feel ashamed to have your back to the enemy in battle? These undead want to take over the entire Silverstar Island. Where do you think you can run to? Gather and get into formation. Follow me and charge at the monsters. Chase these monsters back to hell." The old blacksmith, Kalamani, wasn't just talking nonsense. When he saw a group of 100 undead soldiers chasing after the defeated soldiers, he pounced in front of them like a tiger and let out a thunderous roar that stunned a group of undead creatures. Then, he stabbed an elite spider demon's head with his red-hot steel rod. The blood mist evaporated, and the elite arachne was killed in an instant. Gurumani's body spun like a windmill, and the hammer in his right hand spat out flames, causing the formation of the undead creatures to fall apart. The defeated soldiers of Silverstar City hesitated and stopped in their tracks, a fire igniting in their hearts. The men of the North, regardless of whether they were Vikings or not, were not lacking in bravery and fighting spirit. Previously, they had only lost their commander and were beaten into a daze. Now that the old blacksmith was leading the charge, the defeated soldiers immediately found their backbone and charged forward. More and more of the defeated soldiers of Silverstar City fled here and joined the old blacksmith's team. In less than half an hour, Gormani had gathered more than 300 people behind him. The undead army of 100 had been driven out of the area, and the dozen or so undead that stayed behind to cover their retreat had all been killed. In fact, this was the result of Bai Xiaowen's improvisation. Otherwise, the entire army would have been buried here. Haha! These monsters are just SOSO. Gormani laughed loudly. He took a copper flask from his waist and gulped down a few mouthfuls of strong liquor. He then sprinkled the rest of the liquor on his wounds and muttered, "It's just a scratch. These monsters shouldn't be infected," but in the next second, the smile on Gormani's face disappeared. Disorderly footsteps could be heard. Skeleton soldiers, skeleton archers, skeleton warriors, and ghosts. 3 groups of undead soldiers were approaching from the front. Behind him, the same disorderly footsteps could be heard. 2 blacksmith apprentices ran over with teary faces. "Mr. Gormani, the other road is blocked. There are so many undead monsters. A pincer attack." Gormani's face was grave. As a veteran, he naturally knew how bad the situation was. The 3 groups of undead soldiers in front of him dispersed, and the 3 members of the White Phoenix squad appeared. "A great hermit hides in the city." Bai Xiaowen sighed. "I didn't expect there to be a leader in an inconspicuous blacksmith shop. You've caused me a lot of trouble, Mr. Gormani. How do you know my name?" Gormani was shocked, and he clenched the hammer and drill in his hands. Bai Xiaowen shook his head and smiled, but did not answer. He seemed a little enigmatic. "Put down your weapons, and I can guarantee your safety." Bah! Who would believe the undead's promise? No, you 3 are not undead monsters. You're humans too. Gormani's eyes widened in disbelief. "Why are you leading the undead to invade our city?" Bai Xiaowen smiled. "Don't you think Silverstar City needs a new lord? Don't worry, with me restraining the undead, they won't kill indiscriminately. My goal is to replace Aldington and rule Silverstar City. As long as you're willing to put down your weapons and join the cursing sect, you'll have a better life than before." "I refuse." Gormani was indeed a leader, and he was not easily fooled by Bai Xiaowen. He said coldly, "Although Aldington isn't a good lord, he's still a human. No matter what, we can still live. If the undead rule Silverstar City, we'll have no choice but to go extinct." "What a pity." Bai Xiaowen had the self-awareness of a villain. He waved his hand and said, "Undead army, attack." With a flap of its wings, a strong wind blew. Gloria rode the frost dragon Syndagosa and swooped down, its 2 thick bony hind legs making the ground tremble. "No! Disperse!" Gormani's expression changed. In the next second, the signature combination skill, Cold Breath and Breath of Death, swept up Gormani and the Silverstar soldiers behind him. Close to 100 Silverstar soldiers died, turned into undead by Gloria's cursed blade. They got up and waved their rusty scimitars at their comrades. Gormani roared, bent his legs slightly, and jumped towards Gloria, smashing his one-handed hammer at Syndagosa's head. Clang! The hammer was so heavy that it cracked Syndagosa's skull. Physical damage was secondary, but the flames spurting out of the hammer caused the frost dragon to howl in pain. As a bone dragon whose bones flowed with the cold energy of death, Syndagosa was not only afraid of holy anti-magic damage, but also the violent damage of lightning and fire. Syndagosa could feel the surging heat seeping into his body through the cracks in his skull, as if a red-hot steel drill had been inserted into his brain. However, in the next second, a red-hot steel drill really came stabbing at him. Gormani landed on the ground after his hammer hit the ground, and his short and stout body bounced back a second time. The steel drill went through the cracks in his skull, intending to give the bone dragon a hard blow. Clang! The steel drill was blocked by the cold skeletal greatsword. Guramani and Gloria exchanged blows. The former had no place to stand and was sent flying backwards, landing in front of the bone dragon Sindagosa. Sindagosa did not hesitate and attacked with his claws. Although Guramani crossed his weapons to block, he was still at a disadvantage due to his size. He was smashed into a shop next to him, breaking 2 pillars. Gloria's icy blue eyes flashed with a trace of mockery. She grabbed at the air with her armored left hand. Death's grip. The battered and exhausted blacksmith Guramani was dragged back in the air, his body covered with several illusory frost chains, greatly reducing his speed. This was not the end. The injured frost dragon roared and opened its mouth to bite Guramani's body. Gloria raised the skeletal greatsword with both hands and bent slightly. The blade drew an icy blue arc and slashed at the old blacksmith Guramani's leg. There was no splash of blood, because the blood had been frozen into ice. Guramani fell heavily to the ground. He coughed and stood up, but the cursed blade had already added an abnormal status, aging. Under this status, Guramani's attack speed would be reduced by a lot, and the damage he could take would also increase. Clang! A huge bony claw came down, and Sindagosa stomped Guramani into the ground. Gloria did not even look and threw her sword. It shot out like a stream of light and nailed Guramani's heart, completely extinguishing the old blacksmith's last trace of life. From Gloria's appearance to killing Guramani, only a few exchanges had taken place. Bai Xiaowen was speechless. After Gloria learned the eternal enslavement skill and had a skeletal dragon as her enslaved mount, her strength seemed to have surpassed that of a rare commander. What a waste! I didn't get the soul essence. Bai Xiaowen muttered. Gloria, this wastrel. Gloria waved her hand, and the skeletal greatsword returned to her palm as if it had a mind of its own. She raised the greatsword lightly, and the cursed blade activated once more, turning Guramani into an undead. Unfortunately, perhaps because Guramani's rejection of the undead was too strong, his transformation did not go smoothly after death. He did not become a commander, but a skeleton warrior who had lost his mind. Its stats were comparable to a commander, but it only had a bone race innate skill, so it could be considered a defective product. However, looking at Gloria's expression, she did not seem to care much. She squatted down and gently brushed her right hand over the skeletal dragon's injured skull. Cold death energy surged, quickly expelling the fire. Sindagosa let out a joyful roar, then flapped his wings and flew up again. Without Guramani's leadership, the defeated soldiers of Silverstar City once again became scattered sand, and they fell under the butcher's knife of the undead army. However, until the end, no one was willing to respond to Bai Xiaowen's call to lay down their weapons and join the cursing sect. Perhaps Guramani's sacrifice had inspired these defeated soldiers. Bai Xiaowen heaved a sigh of relief. I keep feeling like I'm the villain. The next second, the sound of hooves rang out like raindrops, interrupting Bai Xiaowen's thoughts. It came from the inner city. Chapter 667. Thud, 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 the cavalry from the inner city rushed over like a storm. Behind them, 5 elite-level mages waved their staffs and cast a common large-scale war buff spell, Courage. Golden light surrounded the knights and warhorses. The cavalry and warhorses completely abandoned their fear of the undead monsters and the frost skeletal dragon and charged forward. The undead army that had regrouped rushed forward with the skeleton soldiers as the vanguard. The first batch of skeleton soldiers was trampled into bone dust by the cavalry. However, the cavalry's speed was also slowed down by the undead skeleton soldiers who did not know death and fear. Then, the elite spider demons spat out spider webs and dragged the slowed cavalry off their horses. The specters floated forward and scratched at the group of metal cans with their sharp claws. Without warhorses, the cavalry lost half of their advantage against the infantry. The first wave of attack that Lord Aldington had planned was eliminated just like that. On top of a tower not far away, Mage Emolua waved his staff. A layer of burning clouds surged in the sky, forming a swirling cloud vortex. Suddenly, fist-sized flaming meteors smashed down. Streaks of meteors drew a path of death on the battlefield. The large-scale spell meteor shower was a skill that required continuous casting. "We can't let that mage go," Bai Xiaowen shouted. In the sky, Gloria was riding the frost dragon Syndagosa. She circled and drifted, dodging the meteors one after another. Then, she flew to the front of the tower at lightning speed and crashed into it. The tower's dome was forcefully knocked off by the frost skeletal dragon's brute force. However, a figure was ejected from the ruins. Mage Molo had cast a slow fall spell on himself and jumped off the building in advance. He landed in midair with a flash. Of course, the meteor shower spell had also ended. Gloria was not satisfied with this result. The frost skeletal dragon circled around and flew back, chasing after Mage Molo. When they were close enough, Gloria reached out her hand and used Death's Grip. Mage Molo screamed as his body was dragged towards Gloria. Bai Xiaowen did not pay any more attention to Emoluo. In his mind, Magician Emoluo was already a dead man. Even the strength-type leader, Guramani, was no match for Gloria in close combat, let alone this rookie mage. Unfortunately, the distance was too far and he couldn't even land a shot. Bai Xiaowen was in a bad mood. He could only command the undead army to encircle and destroy Lord Aldington's cavalry. The battle was extremely tense. Almost every second, there were undead monsters roaring and falling down. There were also human cavalrymen who let out cries of agony before they died. Even Lord Aldington had personally joined the battle. He was the leader of the knights, but his attributes were rather mediocre. He could not be of much help on the battlefield. On the other hand, Gloria entered the main battlefield again after taking care of Mage Molo. The battle gradually tilted in the direction of the undead army's victory. "Aldington! Ask your soldiers to put down their weapons and surrender," Bai Xiaowen shouted. "I can guarantee their safety." Lord Aldington had several wounds on his body. He shouted, "Dream on. Even if I die, I will make you pay the price." He turned his head towards the direction of the Lord's mansion and shouted at the top of his lungs, "Release the monster." Bai Xiaowen was shocked. He knew that the A-rank hero side mission would not be as difficult as it seemed. Although Silver Star City had close to 10 leader-level experts and their combat power was quite strong, they were not united. Thud, thud, thud. The ground rumbled. A huge black shadow flattened the high walls of the Lord's mansion. It stepped on the toy-like houses and appeared on the battlefield. When he got closer, Bai Xiaowen could see clearly that this huge monster was like a butcher who had been skinned. Its bright red muscles and pale white tendons were exposed, and it was particularly terrifying, hideous. The monster grabbed a heavily injured Silver Star City soldier and swallowed him whole with its bottomless throat. All that was left was a series of screams. "What is this monster?" The White Phoenix team and Lich Bard were shocked. Even Gloria's expressionless face showed a hint of surprise. Not only the higher-ups of the undead army, but even the soldiers of Silver Star City had never seen such a monster. Especially when the monster did not seem to differentiate between friend and foe. It swallowed its own comrades. This was really hard to accept. Lord Aldington of Silver Star City laughed loudly. "This is a monster that I have kept in the underground cave. Its appetite can never be satisfied. As time passes, it will grow stronger and stronger. I have been letting the slaves secretly transport the corpses to feed this big guy. This is a surprise for you." With a sweep of its hand, the giant monster grabbed a few Silver Star City soldiers and swallowed them along with a skeleton soldier. Bai Xiaowen frowned. "It doesn't seem to listen to your orders. What's the point of you creating it? Even if you can defeat us, Silver Star City will be destroyed. Compared to giving up Silver Star City, I'd rather destroy it first." Aldington laughed wildly. the owner of Silver Star will always be the Aldington family. All of you will be buried together. Dirty undead monster. The appearance of this monster made the soldiers of Silver Star City lose their will to fight, and they all fled. No one could tolerate the fact that when they were fighting for their lord against the enemy, their lord had released a huge monster that kept eating their fellow soldiers. Bai Xiaowen used insight. Flesh-devouring colossus, unable to confirm model, level 8, race, undead/corpse demon, attributes, strength 60, agility 35, constitution 120, spirit 0, skill 1, shovel jaw. Skill 2, flesh tentacles. The flesh-devouring colossus will whip the enemy with its tentacles, causing physical damage to the enemies within the cone-shaped range. It can also bind the target and immobilize them. Skill 3, corpse poison spray. The flesh-devouring colossus surges with dissolving poison. The enemies within the range will continue to suffer poison damage. The dissolving poison will stack, up to 10 stacks. Skill 4, endless devouring, stage 2 passive. The attributes of the flesh-devouring colossus increase with the number of targets it devours. For every target it devours, it will recover 10% to 50% of its health points, based on the strength of the enemy. This flesh-devouring colossus model could not be confirmed. It also did not have the general toughness skill and additional health points that only high-level leaders or lords had. However, it did not need additional health points. The 120 points of constitution were like a mountain, enough to make people feel hopeless. Not to mention, the flesh-devouring colossus could also recover health points. Even if it ate a small soldier, it could at least recover 10% of its health points. Currently, it had grown to stage 2. If they could not kill it soon, they could only watch this monster grow to stage 3, stage 4, and continue to grow stronger. Maybe it had an upper limit, but from Lord Aldington's confidence, this guy's upper limit was definitely higher than stage 2. Lady Gloria, can you control this corpse monster's thoughts? Bai Xiaowen asked. Gloria, who was standing on Syndagosa's head, shook her head with a solemn expression. It has no thoughts. It's a monster that moves purely by instinct. It's very different from the normal corpse monsters. I can't control it. This corpse monster is too strong. It's not very aggressive now, but it's very difficult to kill. Lich Bard said. It's not a good idea to fill its stomach with undead soldiers. Bai Xiaowen pondered for a moment. Gloria, you command the undead army to kill Aldington and wipe out the remaining soldiers in Silverstar City. Leave this corpse monster to the three of us. Give us enough space on the battlefield. The three of you? Lich Bard was in disbelief. However, Gloria nodded and said, delay it and don't let it grow any further. When the situation is settled, Syndagosa, Bard, and I will come to support you. Roar! The flesh-devouring colossus roared at the sky. Then, its body leaned forward, its big mouth full of fangs pressed against the ground, and its two strong legs kicked with force. Bai Xiaowen suddenly remembered the blue whale's action of preying on shrimps. Several defeated soldiers of Silverstar City and the undead army on the way were swallowed into that big mouth, mixed with mud and ice. This monster really did not care about the cold or the living. Of course, only a small part of them were swallowed by the big mouth. The other people and undead blocking the way were all sent flying by the strong impact. The spiritual realm's rule prompt message, the flesh-devouring colossus skill, shovel jaw has been activated. Li Shi said in the team channel in surprise, its mental strength is only 0. How did it use the skill? Bai Xiaowen had been observing the monster's health bar. Hearing this, he replied, this guy probably doesn't use its mental strength to use the skill, but consumes its health bar. When it used shovel jaw, its health bar dropped by about 100 points. However, with the passive recovery of endless devouring, it quickly recovered to full health. The ferocious performance of the flesh-devouring colossus made the Lich Bard shudder and quickly slip away. As for Gloria, she had already ridden the frost skeletal dragon to chase after Lord Aldington. The undead army also charged under the wings of Gloria's skeletal dragon, deliberately avoiding the flesh-devouring colossus. It was completely meaningless to use small soldiers to attack this colossus. Most of the buildings on the street between the outer city and the inner city had been razed. In this ruined battlefield, only the White Phoenix team was left. The flesh-devouring colossus ignored the White Phoenix team and staggered toward the town area of the outer city. Its desire for flesh and blood dominated its instincts. However, the butcher, who was emitting poisonous gas, blocked its path. The butcher was like a mountain of meat compared to a normal person. However, in front of the flesh-devouring colossus, he was just a child who did not even reach its waist. The flesh-devouring colossus' aberrant giant hands slapped out forcefully, like an adult hitting a child, full of pressure. However, the butcher's giant snake scepter smashed down and blocked this attack without any hesitation. Qiao Rui blew the soul rhythm, and Delifa's soul extraction skill passed. The flesh-devouring colossus' strength was not high to begin with. At this moment, after being continuously weakened, it had already dropped to a little over 40 points, not much higher than the butcher's 35 points. Moreover, the butcher's size also played a role. Otherwise, if the difference in size was too big, he would also be repelled. The flesh-devouring colossus grunted in dissatisfaction, then shook its body, and gray poisonous gas spread out. To many creatures, especially life forms, dissolving poison was like a strong acid that made people pale at the mention of it. However, the butcher's venomous tooth priest equipment set was the least afraid of poison. Its HP was decreasing very slowly, which could be said to be completely within the acceptable range. Stabilized. Let's attack. Bai Xiaowen held his gun with both hands and began to strafe. His long-range attack ability might not be as good as the archer of the hero class, but it was definitely not to be underestimated. In addition, the necromancer also cast Thunderbolt, using the evil breaker damage to whittle down the opponent's HP. Delifa the Banshee did not attack at close range. Instead, after preparing, she directly cast an ultimate skill, turning all the corpses on the battlefield into skeleton soldiers and pulling them up. Delifa also did not let the skeleton soldiers join the battle, but instead drove them away from the battlefield. These weak skeleton soldiers were like moving health potions for the flesh-devouring colossus. Although Bai Xiaowen had already taken out 200 to 300 points of its HP, if he really used Shovel Jaw, it would be restored to full in a matter of minutes. Bai Xiaowen summoned the Wrath Claw to attack. The Wrath Claw's HP dropped rapidly within the range of dissolving poison, and Blood Rage was also triggered. However, this was exactly the effect Bai Xiaowen wanted. His HP was also continuously decreasing under life-sharing link, and he received the damage after the damage was shared. The pain potential of the Ring of Pain was triggered, and Bai Xiaowen's strength was rapidly increasing. This caused the damage of each of his shots to increase. Under the multiple debuffs, the flesh-devouring colossus's original 120 points of double resistance was reduced to 30 to 40 points. Among them, the decaying poison buff from the butcher's equipment set was definitely the main force. Under the effects of Bai Xiaowen and the necromancer's long-range attacks, as well as the butcher's close-range poison damage, the flesh-devouring colossus's HP dropped rapidly. It did not take long for its HP to be reduced to half. The main reason why this fellow was difficult to deal with was because of its powerful vitality and its shameless recovery ability. Dissolving poison was also a key point in dealing with close-range attacks. However, now that its vitality and damage reduction had been greatly weakened, it could not devour flesh and corpses, and recovery was impossible. Dissolving poison was even more of a joke to the butcher. The monster that Lord Aldington regarded as his final trump card, and that even Gloria and Bard found difficult to deal with, was so easy to deal with once the right strategy was found. The flesh-devouring colossus also activated its flesh tentacles once, trying to entangle Bai Xiaowen. However, under the early warning of insight, Bai Xiaowen easily dodged with the help of the party skill. Other than wasting the HP needed to activate the skill, the flesh-devouring colossus did not gain anything. Chapter 668. Bai Xiaowen summoned the skeleton warrior, the shadow assassin, and all other summoned creatures. The wrath claw howled to the sky. All the allies had a 20% attack power and 20% attack speed buff. They officially blew the horn for the kill. The shadow assassin appeared behind the flesh-devouring colossus and dealt double damage with its assassination skill. Li Shi closed in on the monster with a barbaric charge, while the Red Leaf Overlord's glory longsword absorbed the monster's blood and strength. Both of its swords attacked fiercely. The skeleton warrior's greatsword charged up power, while the butcher's giant snake scepter charged up power. Bai Xiaowen stunned the monster with a single deterrence, while the two charged-up attacks smashed down heavily. Qiao Rui also used heal on the flesh-devouring colossus, causing it to receive 100+ nature damage, which was actually poison damage. The flesh-devouring colossus HP was already decreasing rapidly, and Qiao Rui's poison was fatal. Bai Xiaowen's last penetrating bullet triggered the Blood Essence Stone's thirst for slaughter, dealing 120 additional true damage and completely taking away the last trace of the flesh-devouring colossus HP. With a thud, the flesh-devouring colossus fell to the ground. A treasure chest that was flashing gold and silver with a hint of dark gold light appeared. As the template of the flesh-devouring colossus could not be determined, this treasure chest's grade could not be determined. What could be drawn depended on luck. At this time, the battle in Silver Star City was coming to an end. The White Phoenix team opened this strange treasure chest. This battle was not difficult, but it was actually given an A-grade evaluation. It was a pleasant surprise. The three of them each drew a loot card. You have obtained material, giant jawbone. You have obtained special item, flesh-devouring colossus stomach. You have obtained special item, experiment notes, incomplete. The three of them did not draw any equipment, items, or other combat items. They only obtained materials and a notebook. Giant jawbone, this ferocious-looking skeleton has hard and sharp teeth. Please find a skilled blacksmith to obtain more information on the uses of the jawbone. Flesh Devourer's stomach, enhancement item. Used on corpse demon undead creatures. Has a chance to grant them new abilities. If the user's affinity is not high enough, it will fail. Please use with caution. Experiment notes, incomplete notes on the modulation of the flesh-devouring colossus. Please contact the relevant researchers to obtain more information on the uses of this experiment note. Disappears after reading. No wonder it was given an A rating. It didn't drop any equipment. Bai Xiaowen muttered to himself as he kept the three items. Other than the flesh devourer's stomach pouch that could be considered for butcher's use, the other two items needed careful consideration. However, Bai Xiaowen didn't plan to use it on Butcher right now. This kind of strengthening item might cause Butcher to fall into a deep slumber, and it was unknown when he would wake up, just like Keats, who was currently hibernating in the Black Soul Stone. Next, the White Phoenix team entered the inner city. At this time, Gloria and the Lich Bard had already wiped out the remaining resistance in the inner city. Lord Aldington had retreated to his dilapidated mansion and burned down the entire manor, turning this luxurious mansion with hundreds of years of history into a wasteland. The raging fire in the Lord's mansion also meant the end of the Aldington family's rule in Silverstar territory. A new kingdom of the dead had its first city as a stronghold on this land. Next, the kingdom of the dead would expand to the entire Silverstar Island and turn it into its main camp. Next was the process of clearing out the remaining enemies. It was worth mentioning that some of the defeated soldiers of Silverstar City were actually willing to surrender to the undead army when they had nowhere to go and lost all hope. Perhaps to them, it was a dead end either way, so they might as well surrender and fight for a chance of survival. Bai Xiaowen strictly ordered the undead army not to kill or surrender. Gloria had given him great authority, allowing Bai Xiaowen to control the actions of these undead creatures who had an instinctive hatred for the living. At dawn, the battle in Silverstar City had reached its end. A notification came from the spiritual realm: the kingdom of the dead's control over Silverstar City has exceeded 75%. The original lord, Harlan Aldington, has died. the kingdom of the dead has obtained the actual ruling rights of Silverstar City. Dark Knight Gloria's template has been upgraded to Lord level. Dark Knight Gloria has been upgraded to Dark Knight Lord. Dark Knight Lord Gloria has learned a new skill, Death Injection. Dark Knight Lord Gloria's special skill, Death Breath, has been upgraded to Lord level skill, Death Halo. The psionic particles around Gloria's body were abnormally dense. It had completely surpassed the leader template and reached a whole new level. Beside her, skeleton soldiers, ghosts, spiders, vampires, all the undead creatures spontaneously knelt down on one knee and bowed their heads to pay their respects to the new undead lord. This was an instinctive reverence. Even the Ice Blast Wyrm Syndagosa had placed its huge bony head on the ground for Gloria to step on as a sign of submission. The Lich Bard's skeleton was trembling. He knelt on the ground and opened and closed his jaw, trying to make a sound of magic resonance. However, in the end, he could only say one sentence. "Your Majesty." Gloria stepped on the bone dragon Syndagosa. "I need some time to familiarize myself with my power. Dior Caleboom will be in charge of the aftermath of Silverstar City and the subsequent attack plan on Silverstar Island. Lich Bard will be in charge of assisting." "As you wish." Lich Bard was not in the mood to raise any objections. Bai Xiaowen placed his right hand on his chest and performed a common etiquette in the Yaluan continent. He smiled and said, "As you wish." He secretly used insight to check Gloria's current information. Gloria's attributes had increased again. Her total attributes had exceeded 260 points. Among them, the highest strength value had already reached 102 points. Gloria's vitality was also quite strong. It had reached 78 points, which was comparable to a high-level leader with vitality. However, Bai Xiaowen could not check the information of the most important skills, especially the newly acquired Death Injection and the evolved Lord-level skill, Death Halo. All he got were question marks. As for the other 4 skills, Cursed Blade, Undead Sacrifice, Death Grip, and Eternal Enslavement, there were no changes. However, Bai Xiaowen knew that Gloria's power had increased tremendously. She had no choice but to stop leading the Death Kingdom to digest her new power. Bai Xiaowen once again obtained the authority to command the undead army. He immediately gave 2 orders. First, close the city gates. The undead army was to scatter and search the city for the remaining resistors. Second, put up Cursing Sect flyers. The main point was, of course, the flyers of the Cursing Sect. In order to develop the Cursing Sect, Bai Xiaowen had specially ordered a generous policy of tax exemption for the sect's followers. In the flyers, Bai Xiaowen first announced that the city was under the rule of the Cursing Sect. He also promised that the undead army would not kill the civilians. Then, he wrote down the doctrine of the Cursing Sect. Finally, the most important thing was that anyone who joined the Cursing Sect would receive a 30% tax reduction. To be honest, Aldington's previous harsh taxation had done Bai Xiaowen a great favor. It had given him a chance to win the hearts of the people. Many panicked human civilians saw the flyers, and their panic was suppressed to a certain extent. They saw with their own eyes that the undead creatures ignored the civilians who were not armed. This undoubtedly confirmed the promise of not killing civilians on the flyers. Many people's minds became active. To them, it did not matter who ruled Silverstar City. Even if the devil ruled the city, as long as there was a tax reduction, the ruler would definitely be an angel. As for joining the Cursing Sect, the civilians did not have too many concerns. Anyway, the doctrine did not require the followers to pay any tribute. It was just an empty title. There would not be any losses if they joined. Of course, joining the Cursing Sect would guarantee their safety. Bai Xiaowen was very clear about the thoughts of these people. Of course, his plan was not that simple. Luring these people into the Cursing Sect was only the first step. Next, he would divide the followers into ranks. High-level followers would receive a higher tax exemption, and even tax exemption. The core acolytes would even receive a salary. In short, he would use the method of dividing the ranks to arouse the desire to compete in the hearts of the false followers. How to become a high-level follower? Comparing years of experience was a good way, so they should join as soon as possible. Of course, followers with the same experience would be differentiated according to their performance. Bai Xiaowen had already summarized a set of detailed rules and handed them to the Lich Bard. That's right. Bai Xiaowen had specially asked the Lich Bard to do the registration work of the cursing sect's followers. He had to explain this set of detailed rules to every civilian who visited. He also asked them to smile and speak in an amiable voice. They were absolutely not allowed to use force against potential followers. This made Bard very angry, and he kept muttering that he wanted to complain to Lady Gloria and so on. After a long time, they finally cleared out the remaining resistance forces in Silver Star City. After this battle, the undead army did not expand much. It was a little difficult to use them to defend Silver Star City. Therefore, the task of conquering the remaining areas of Silver Star Island naturally fell to the White Phoenix team. Bai Xiaowen remembered that the White Phoenix team's A-rank hero side mission would only be completed after they controlled the entire Silver Star Island. This was also the reason why Bai Xiaowen handed the task of developing the cursing sect to Bard. There was really no one else he could use. However, after the situation in Silver Star City stabilized, Bai Xiaowen and the other two found some time to open the treasure chests of the two ascetic monks leaders that they obtained from the Battle of the Church of Light. The two treasure chests were only rated C rank. A special item was opened from the treasure chest of the ascetic monk leader, Sanger. Advanced Staff Technique Tutorial. This is the textbook that the ascetic monk leader, Sanger, imparts to the ascetic monks' combat techniques. After use, your advanced combat specialty, Polearm Mastery, will receive an additional increase of proficiency by 100%. The effect of this tutorial will permanently expire after your Polearm Mastery reaches level 7. Number of uses, 1/1. Disappears after use. This tutorial was a good loot. There was no need to say more about the importance of combat specialties. Just look at the Delphi and you would know. As a rare elite with a spirit specialization, there were not many who dared to fight a strength specialization leader head-on in close combat. This was all thanks to the super combat specialization. Li Shi and Qiao Rui could not use it, so this staff technique tutorial was given to Bai Xiaowen. His butcher used a scepter, which was also a polearm. Bai Xiaowen did not use the staff technique tutorial for the time being. He planned to use telepathy with the Delphi after returning to the Earth dimension and share the Delphi's polearm specialization. Then, he would use it together with this advanced tutorial to maximize the efficiency. Perhaps it would not be long before he could raise his polearm mastery to level 7. At that time, with the support of the strongest brainiac, his polearm mastery would reach level 8. It would be more effective to control the butcher. Bai Xiaowen could not help but think of a strange scene. The tall and strong butcher held the heavy giant snake scepter as if it was an embroidery needle, lifting it as if it were a light weight as he struck out with an elegant and agile staff technique. This scene was quite beautiful. Bai Xiaowen shook his head. Next was the treasure chest of the ascetic monk leader, Polas. It finally dropped a piece of equipment. It was the special steel staff used by Polas. Double severed tooth, bound after pickup, equipment quality, hero, gold, equipment position, dual wielding/dual wielding, equipment requirements, base strength 30, base agility 30, attribute, attack power 16 to 38, additional skill, dual wielding stance, passive. In the combined state, the additional attack power of the double severed tooth weapon is increased by an additional 25%. When the dual wielding stance is activated, the double severed tooth can be separated into two one-handed short spears. The attack speed is increased by 100%, but the additional attack power will be reduced to 60% of the interface attack power. Durability description: this weapon of mysterious origin is engraved with 12 foreign words: an inch long, an inch strong, an inch short, an inch dangerous. Seeing the 12 words engraved on the double severed tooth, Bai Xiaowen suddenly felt a little Spartan. This. What's going on? Isn't this the Aaron dimension world, which only has one continent? How can there be a weapon from another dimension, and it's in the ancient Huaxia style? Li Shui and Qiao Rui looked at it and clicked their tongues in wonder. Qiao Rui said, "The Awakened have also been trapped in the spirit realm. If their equipment is lost to the spirit realm, the original owner must have met with misfortune." Li Shui's little brain reacted very quickly. "So, we're avenging the Awakened from Earth. I guess this Pull has killed an Awakened from Earth and picked up his weapon?" Qiao Rui shook his head. "Maybe. But according to common sense, even if an Awakened is killed, the equipment should have turned into psionic particles and dissipated. This kind of loss of equipment is extremely rare." Chapter 669. It was worth mentioning that the leader of the ascetics, Sanger, had a special item that was not part of the loot list. It was the Sanger's emblem. It indicated that this emblem could be used to exchange for corresponding achievement points from the quartermaster of the opposing faction. However, it did not state how much the achievement points would be. This was easy to understand. It was likely that different camps' quartermasters would give different valuations of merit points. The more powerful the faction, the lower the valuation. Smaller factions might give a sky-high price of a few thousand merit points. Sanger belonged to the Church of Light and could be considered a neutral faction. According to the beliefs of the Aaron Plane, he could be considered part of the Imperial Army faction. This was because the Vikings of the Yusak Resistance Army basically believed in the god of war. However, Bai Xiaowen could not join the Resistance Army now. His Kingdom of Death faction was secretly opposed to any living faction. The threshold to rejoin the Resistance Army faction was very high. Moreover, it was a strenuous and unrewarding task. He also had to be wary of Gloria hunting him down in anger. He could only leave it to the quartermaster of the Kingdom of Death faction. However, the Kingdom of Death currently did not even have a quartermaster. However, with Silverstar Island officially becoming the headquarters of the Kingdom of Death, the Kingdom of Death should be on the right track as a faction with a base. A quartermaster would definitely appear as part of the faction. He just had to wait patiently. For the next few days, the White Phoenix Squad attacked Silverstar Island according to the plan. The White Phoenix Squad attacked Silverstar Harbor first. Bai Xiaowen ordered all the ships in the harbor to be sunk and the docks to be burned. The harbor with a long history was completely abandoned, cutting off Silverstar Island from the surrounding territories. Under the leadership of some elite officers, the scattered soldiers that escaped from Silverstar City formed various resistance groups. However, due to Aldington's oppressive rule, these resistance groups under Aldington's banner could not gain the support of the people of Silverstar Island. They could not do anything. Bai Xiaowen led the White Phoenix Squad on a campaign. In a few days, they wiped out all the resistance groups on Silverstar Island. The Kingdom of Death had completely taken control of Silverstar Island. The laws of the spiritual realm soon notified him that the Lord-level side quest had been completed. He needed to find Gloria to submit it. Silverstar City. The first batch of believers of the cursing sect had managed to rebuild the Liege's mansion from the ruins. From this point alone, one could see how wise Bai Xiaowen's decision was. Otherwise, how could those unintelligent undead be able to complete the task of building a house? Of course, this group of believers also received the rewards they deserved. They were directly promoted to level 2 believers and had their taxes reduced by 40%. They also had the privilege of purchasing ownerless properties in Silver Star City at a low price. The cursing sect on Silver Star Island had already taken shape. In just a few days, it had grown to over 10,000 members, accounting for more than a third of the current population of Silver Star City. Lich Bard was so tired that his hand almost broke from doing the registration work. In the Liege's residence, Bai Xiaowen met Gloria, who had finished digesting her power and had come out of seclusion. The dense waves of psionic particles around Gloria had been restrained. With Bai Xiaowen's senses, he could no longer sense that she was a Lord-class powerhouse unless he used insight to look at her template. Bai Xiaowen chose to submit the mission. Gloria leaned against the high throne, and the huge body of the frost skeletal dragon crawled at her feet. Gloria's voice was cold and ethereal. Silver Star Island has been under the rule of the Kingdom of Death. This name that carries the history of the past is no longer useful. Dior, come up with a new name. Obviously, Bai Xiaowen's ability to name the frost skeletal dragon had gained Gloria's approval. Let's call it Northrend, Bai Xiaowen said solemnly. Yes, not bad. Gloria nodded in approval. Northrend actually meant the land of the far north. Dior, your performance was impeccable. Without you, the Kingdom of Death would not have taken over the entire Northrend Islands so smoothly. Your individual strength and the strength of your team are outstanding, and your commanding talent is even more outstanding. I will give you a reward that matches your performance. Bai Xiaowen felt very comfortable in his heart. The faction leader that he had cultivated was indeed reliable. She did not even need to talk to him to get benefits. She just gave it directly. Gloria took out 2 faintly glowing pages of unknown material and handed one of them to Bai Xiaowen. Sign this contract if you are satisfied with this reward. You have received a gold item, Call of the North, inactive. Call of the North, inactive grade C gold item, contract summoning item. After use, you can open an interplanar portal and temporarily summon the Black Knight Overlord, Gloria, to fight for you. Standard duration, 10 minutes. The stronger Gloria is, the shorter the duration. Rechargeable. Current usage, 1/1. Cooldown, 7 natural days. Note 1, if the Black Knight Overlord, Gloria, is in combat state, she cannot respond to your summons. Accordingly, the usage of this item will not be consumed. Note 2, Call of the North is a chain item. Gloria also has the right to summon you and your party into the north. Within 12 hours of the summoning effect, you and your party must respond to the summons. Otherwise, the contract will be voided. Note 3, Call of the North is a contract summoning item. Both parties need to sign the contract with blood for the item to take effect. A rechargeable grade C gold item? Bai Xiaowen took a deep breath, concealing the shock in his heart. As expected of a Lord mission, the reward was such a rare item. Gloria said slowly, in the Aldington family's treasure vault, I found a few indestructible treasures, including a God's Gift page. Relying on the power of the God's Gift page, I ordered the Lich Bard to help me create this contract. This contract, after every use, I need to inject energy into it again, right? How do I recharge it? Bai Xiaowen asked. Gloria said, the contract uses my blood as the medium. After using the contract to summon me, you need to come to Northrend. As long as you can complete the mission I give you, I can sign my name on the contract again. Bai Xiaowen understood. He and Gloria had summoned each other for help. It was a form of mutual benefit. Why would Bai Xiaowen come to Northrend? The probability of passing through the spiritual world ticket was too low. Although some unique items in the Aeron plane could have a positioning effect, as the Awakens level and template increased, the requirements for positioning items would also increase. In addition, positioning items could only be used once. Back when Li Shi was a quasi-awakened, she only needed a Yellow Turban Army Sergeant's waist token to locate her to the Three Kingdoms plane. But now? If she wanted to enter the Three Kingdoms plane, she would need at least a special clue dropped by a rare elite in the Three Kingdoms plane. Only then would she be able to do it. And Bai Xiaowen's requirements for a positioning item were even higher. Therefore, Bai Xiaowen could only respond to Gloria's summon to accurately come to Northrend, complete the mission, and recharge the contract item. As a lord, Gloria would not have many opportunities to ask for Bai Xiaowen's help. Unless she encountered a large-scale battle, she could borrow Bai Xiaowen's commanding ability. In other words, once Summon of the North was used, it would take a long time to recharge it. Therefore, it had to be used cautiously as a trump card at a critical moment. Gloria's right fingertip gently drew a line on the skeletal greatsword, and dark red blood slowly flowed out. She wrote her name in the corresponding position on the contract with her finger. Bai Xiaowen also bit his fingertip, but he hesitated before writing his name. Should I write Drs. Kale Bloom's alias, or my real name on Earth? Bai Xiaowen only hesitated for 0.1 seconds before writing down Drs. Kale Bloom's name. The light of the contract flickered, and an invisible connection formed between him and Gloria. In fact, the signature was just a formality in this kind of contract. The key was the blood of the contractor. Bai Xiaowen could even draw a circle with the blood on his fingertip. There were 2 copies of the contract. After signing both contracts, Gloria and Bai Xiaowen each held 1 copy. Looking at this contract carefully, it's a bit unfair. We can only summon you for 10 minutes each time. Is there any way to extend the time? Bai Xiaowen asked. Gloria said faintly, the energy stored in the Gods Bestowed page is only enough for me to cross over for 10 minutes before I have to return. Unless I open a one-way planar teleportation door, then I can stay forever, but I'll need to make a new one-way teleportation contract. However, there's only 1 Gods Bestowed page in Aldington's treasury. Ah, that won't be necessary. Bai Xiaowen blushed with shame. If she used the contract summoning item on Earth, wouldn't Gloria destroy Earth? That's not right. It's better to leave her to harm the people of Erin. Gloria then said, after occupying Silvestar Island, the treasury of the Kingdom of Death has increased a lot of treasures, including some items I made, mainly to reward outsiders like you. You can go find Bard. Following this order, Bai Xiaowen received a notification from the Spiritual Realms Rules Frowny Face. You've received a reward, 5,000 merit points, Kingdom of Death. Your reputation in the Kingdom of Death has greatly increased. Current reputation level, Reverence. Black Knight Overlord Gloria's favorability towards you has greatly increased. Current favorability level, Friend. Black Knight Overlord Gloria's favorability towards you has greatly increased. Current favorability level, Appreciation, unchanged. Lich Bard has become a quartermaster. Although it was a little strange, it was not unexpected. After all, Gloria and Bard the Lich were the only high-ranking characters in the Nation of Death. They could not expect Sinagosa to make a cameo appearance as the quartermaster, right? Speaking of merit points, Bai Xiaowen quickly handed the Sanger's emblem to Gloria. The emblem of an ascetic? Good loot. Gloria nodded. You've proven yourself worthy of being a warrior of the Kingdom of Death. Bai Xiaowen immediately received another notification that he was rewarded with 800 merit points. Then, the White Phoenix team found Lich Bard at the registration office of Scholomance. Drs. Kale Bloom. You came at the right time. Hurry up and explain the rules of admission to these people. Lich Bard shouted. As the Dean of Scholomance, you can't shirk your responsibility. I'm tired of looking at these disgusting ignorant faces. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said to the prospective students waiting in line, make way, I have a few words to say to the clerk. These residents of Silver Star City, now called Northrend, retreated in fear and left the room. What's going on? Lich Bard was a bit vigilant. Why did you drive the outsiders away? Do you want to? Don't misunderstand, Bai Xiaowen said with a smile. Open the merit points exchange list. Lich Bard immediately froze and entered the selling mode of a human-shaped ATM machine. Whoosh! A list of items was displayed. Bai Xiaowen admired Bard's slightly open jaw, as if he had something stuck in his throat. He praised, this state is still more peaceful. Li Shi and Xiao Rui began to look at the merit points exchange list, but the next second, the two closed the list with a frightened expression. What's wrong? Bai Xiaowen asked. It's too scary. Li Shi's face was bitter. Or rather, it's disgusting. Bai Xiaowen glanced at it and couldn't help but smile bitterly. It was no wonder that the two beautiful teammates were so frightened. The Kingdom of Death's exchange list was really too strange. Rotten blood, drink, delicious brain matter, food, half-rotten liver, food. Just looking at the names was enough to make one want to vomit, not to mention the accompanying pictures. Those with a weak immune system would not be able to stomach it. Although these foods and drinks were rather strange, their effects were quite powerful. Take the food delicious brain juice, vomit, for example. The total amount of HP recovered was twice as much as the rice snacks. Li Shi complained, which awakened would be willing to exchange for this kind of food? It's useless no matter how much HP they recover. Normally, it's very difficult for awakened to find a way to join a faction like the Kingdom of Death, because awakened themselves are living beings and are secretly opposed to the Kingdom of Death. It's completely a coincidence that we joined, Bai Xiaowen said. Similarly, there's also the King of Fighters Planar World, the Serpent Destroyers faction. It's hostile to all humans, so it's naturally extremely difficult to join. And even if you join, you'll be restricted at every step. It's normal that you don't get any benefits from it. Li Shi recalled Lich Bard's doubts about the White Phoenix team and nodded in relief. Bai Xiaowen chose to exclude the food, drink, list. Let's not talk about the standard equipment in the list. The focus was on the item category. Shadow Infusion Scroll, a plus great item. Use it on friendly undead creatures to obtain a temporary strengthening effect and +8 to all attributes. Use it on enemies to cause 150 shadow damage. Requires 2000 achievement points. Shadow Grip Scroll, a great item. Drag an enemy within a 50-meter radius to your side and apply a moderate speed reduction effect for 5 seconds. If the target's strength is higher than yours, there is a chance that the shadow grip will fail. The greater the difference in strength, the higher the failure rate. Chapter 670. For example, Shadow Grip was obviously a weaker version of Gloria's Death Grip skill. As for Shadow Infusion, Bai Xiaowen remembered that when Gloria was promoted to a lord, she had obtained a skill called Death Infusion. He could tell the connection from the name alone. The Kingdom of Death is still poor. In order to fill the treasury, even Lord Gloria has to make scrolls and sell them. Li Shi exhaled. This item seems good, Bai Xiaowen said suddenly as he flipped to the end of the list. Enslavement Spell, S-grade item. Use on near-death creatures of elite and below to forcibly enslave them and turn them into your slave. If the target creature agrees to be enslaved, it does not need to enter a near-death state. Disappears after use. Requires 4,500 merit points. It is indeed good. Although a slave does not enjoy the various bonuses of its master, it is still a combat force. An item that can permanently increase the combat power of an elite class is worthy of an S-grade item, Qiao Rui commented. A slave was similar to the follower mentioned earlier, but there were subtle differences. Other than the fact that the slave did not enjoy the bonuses of its master and that the master could kill it with a single thought, the master could observe the slave's thoughts, emotions, and mental thoughts with a single thought. It could be said that the slave had no privacy. This was the difference between a slave and a follower. Bai Xiaowen calculated the Kingdom of Death merit points that the team had accumulated so far. After completing the A-grade hero mission, Battle of Silver Star Island and the Lord mission, the Rise of the Death Lord, plus the merit points accumulated from killing enemies, the White Phoenix team now had 9,755 merit points on their account. Bai Xiaowen first exchanged for an enslavement spell and a shadow infusion scroll, spending 6,500 merit points. Bai Xiaowen used the remaining 3,000 merit points to exchange for some special materials. Ancient Dragon Bone *2, Spoils of War excavated from the Tomb of the Giant Dragon, a special crafting material. Please contact a skilled blacksmith to learn more about the uses of this item. Frost Iron *10, a specialty of Silver Star Island, a crafting material. Please contact the blacksmith to learn more about the uses of this item. The reason why they exchanged for these materials was because the White Phoenix team had obtained a giant jawbone after killing the flesh-devouring Colossus. It could be given to the blacksmith to forge equipment. Bai Xiaowen had always thought much further than that. It was not realistic to forge a piece of giant jawbone into a piece of equipment. He would need some supplementary materials. Although dragon bones and frost pattern iron might not necessarily be used as supplementary materials for crafting equipment, the White Phoenix squad had plenty of storage space. It would definitely not be wrong to stock up on some crafting materials. Unfortunately, the most powerful blacksmith on Silver Star Island, now called No Scent, had been killed by Gloria. As Bai Xiaowen did not participate in the attack, he could not even collect Gloria's soul. Otherwise, he could have let Gloria take a look at the giant jaw. However, even though Guramani had died, his 2 young apprentices had survived. The 2 of them were very weak and had no intention of avenging Guramani. They could not escape No Sen Island, and they were unwilling to join Scholomance, so they hid in Silver Star City. However, in less than 3 days, the 2 of them were exposed by the new students of Scholomance, who were eager to make contributions. They were escorted to Bai Xiaowen. Bai Xiaowen did not say much, and the 2 young apprentices were terrified and expressed their willingness to join Scholomance. Bai Xiaowen took out the giant jawbone and showed it to them. "With your experience, what kind of equipment can you make from this?" The 2 apprentices said awkwardly, "We have not learned from Mr. Guramani yet." "It's okay, just take a look and give some suggestions," Bai Xiaowen thought to himself. He was still worried about getting this from their leader. The crafting materials were given to the 2 apprentices to practice on. One of the apprentices bravely said, "This bone is naturally shaped like a giant scythe. If the teeth attached to it are removed and the edges are sharpened, it will become a giant bone scythe." The other apprentice had a different opinion. "The teeth on the bone itself are rare weapons, it would be a waste to remove them. The end of the bone should be polished and inlaid with a metal blade. Then the main body of the bone should be reinforced with metal to make a bone-tooth-heavy sword. Its attack power would definitely be shocking, and it would also have some special effects." The first apprentice shook his head. "This way, the weapon would be too heavy. I'm afraid it would be difficult for anyone to use it." "Okay, you don't need to argue." Bai Xiaowen nodded with satisfaction. These 2 apprentices were already impatient to prove their worth. This was naturally very good. The Kingdom of Death was in urgent need of such talents with specialized skills. Although these 2 were ugly, if they were given good treatment, other no-scent humans with specialized skills would naturally be attracted to join Scholomance. "In view of your specialized abilities, I've decided to make an exception and promote you 2 by 2 levels. Work hard and forge better and more durable weapons for the army. Your status will keep rising," Bai Xiaowen said. The 2 apprentices uneasily thanked him and then walked out of the manor under Bai Xiaowen's signal. They still didn't understand the significance of being a level 3 student, but they would understand once they understood the details of Scholomance. In the hallway, the 2 met other new students of Scholomance. After chatting, the 2 talked about their status as level 3 students. The other side had a startled and incredulous expression, as well as having to follow the etiquette of a lower-level student bowing to a higher-level student. This made the 2 blacksmith apprentices secretly happy. Bai Xiaowen still had a few hundred merit points left, but he wasn't in a hurry to spend them all. No Scent wasn't a place where one could just grab a handful and leave. Because of the C-grade gold item, Call of the North, the White Phoenix squad and Gloria already had a close relationship with No Scent. They would come again in the future. At that time, there might be more rare specialties from various places on the merit points exchange list. With the completion of the Lord-level quest, Bai Xiaowen's experience bar also welcomed another large increase. He was now at level 6 with 94% experience. In other words, after coming out of the tomb and completing the Rise of the Death Lord quest, Bai Xiaowen received a total of 35% experience increase. This was the experience of a hero class. Qiao Rui had been stuck at level 6 for a long time. After eating this experience pack, she directly reached level 6 with 100% experience and could now reach level 7. Of course, she wasn't in a hurry to reach level 7. She could wait until the next time she entered a new plane. Li Shi felt that she was too weak. She was already at level 6 with 100% experience. If she didn't level up, she wouldn't be able to enjoy such a rich experience pack. This was equivalent to more than half a level for an elite class, at level 6. But this couldn't be helped. Everything had to make way for the hero's trial. In addition, after completing the Death Lord level quest, the White Phoenix Squad's experience bar was directly filled. It had to be said that the final A-grade hero quest, the Battle of Silver Star Island, and the Lord level quest had rewarded the squad with a lot of experience. Bai Xiaowen directly chose to upgrade the squad to level 4. Current experience bar, level elite squad. There were improvements in all aspects. The squad's passive skill brutality was upgraded to level 4. There were no additional effects, but the increase in critical hit rate was increased to 10%. The squad's active skill traction was upgraded to level 4. The traction range was still 150 meters, and the cooldown was reduced to 6 hours and 30 minutes. The last and most important upgrade was the addition of a permanent member to the squad. Bai Xiaowen directly invited Xiao Rui to become a permanent member, and the latter agreed without hesitation. At this point, the White Phoenix Squad had 3 official members, and Xiao Rui's temporary member spot was still there. In other words, Bai Xiaowen could invite other metahumans to be temporary teammates and explore the spiritual world together. A luxurious squad with 2 hero professions and a rare elite. The temporary member spot was very tempting. It was practically a shining thigh accessory. But Bai Xiaowen, Xiao Rui, and Li Shi discussed and decided not to spread the news. Having too many members in the squad also had its drawbacks. When they killed the boss, their rating would drop. Now that the 3-man squad had killed a level 7 boss, their rating had dropped to level C. If it was a 4-man squad, their rating would obviously drop even further. At that time, there would be too many people and too little porridge, and it would be difficult to distribute them. Finally, Bai Xiaowen went to find Gloria. This new Black Knight Lord did not stay in the city's Lord's mansion. Instead, she lived alone on the peak of a snowy mountain with Sinagosa. The advantage of being an undead creature of the corpse demon race was that they did not need to eat or breathe. In order to please his master, the Lich Bard ordered the defeated soldiers of Silver Star City to help excavate the snowy mountain and build stone stairs. This flattering Lich even proposed to flatten the peak of the mountain and build a palace for Lady Gloria, but Gloria refused. On the contrary, Bai Xiaowen's bad taste flared up. He proposed to carve a throne for Gloria at the peak of the mountain, which was tacitly approved by Gloria. Soon, a forbidden area called the Frozen Throne was born in No Scent. The White Phoenix Squad walked up the stone stairs to the top of the mountain and unexpectedly found a living person on the Frozen Throne. It was the little girl called Sonia. Gloria stood at the edge of the cliff with her arms crossed. She faced the bottomless cliff and the cold wind that surged between the cliffs, as if she was thinking about life. Behind her, the little girl Sonia was drawing circles with a sad face. To be precise, she was tracing the trajectory of a spell. What a surprise! I didn't expect you to be willing to communicate with the living. Bai Xiaowen's voice sounded. Xiao Rui pulled on Li Shi and waited on the stone stairs at the entrance of the Frozen Throne. Gloria did not turn her head and indifferently said, "This little girl has the potential to learn necromancy. I'm just teaching her some basic things." "Okay, I came to say goodbye. As outsiders, we can't stay in the Aran Plane for too long. The time limit for returning is already up," Bai Xiaowen said. Gloria paused for a second and turned around. Have you ever thought of joining us?" Gloria's ice blue eyes were unblinkingly staring at Bai Xiaowen. Bai Xiaowen was slightly surprised, but he immediately interrupted with a smile, "I'm a member of the Death Kingdom." A hint of disappointment appeared in Gloria's eyes, but she quickly hid it. She snorted softly and said, "Forget it. Just pretend I didn't say that." Bai Xiaowen secretly exclaimed that it was a close call. He did not want to be an undead creature. It was cold and boring. Even if he could live forever and had many benefits such as not sleeping, not eating, and not drinking, he would lose a lot of fun. In addition, if he became an undead, it was unknown whether he could still retain his identity as an awakened. "I'm leaving. You take care." If you encounter any problems, you can call me through the contract. Bai Xiaowen originally wanted to say a few more words, but seeing that the atmosphere was a little strange, he did not say much. Gloria's cloak whirled, and she faced the cliff again in silence. Bai Xiaowen was secretly surprised. After becoming an undead creature, Gloria still had such rich and delicate feelings. It was a little surprising. However, he did not think too much about it. After looking at Xiao Rui and Li Shi and nodded, he chose to return. A white light flashed, and Bai Xiaowen and the other two came to the checkout interface. It was a boundless starry sky. Scenes flashed by quickly. The surprise attack on the North County city, the exploration of the mausoleum, the killing of the Archmage Kevin. The scene at the light pass was missing. It directly jumped to the battle at the Dragon's Tomb, and then the battle at Silver Star Island. The last scene was fixed at the moment when the flesh-devouring Colossus fell. Exploration plane, Aaron World. Time used, 14 days, 22 hours, 23 minutes, 44 seconds. Range, Northern Territory of the Lionheart Empire, Ayla Territory, Pointed Helmet Territory, North County Territory, Silver Star Territory, Northrend. Based on the missions and evaluations you have discovered and completed, you have received a reward of 32,116 psionic energy points. Current total psionic energy points, 341,569 points. You have accumulated 7,909 points of fame in the Aaron Plane. Your fame in the Aaron Plane is Class A, famous throughout the world. You have received the Class A title, Pioneer of the Undead. Pioneer of the Undead, you lead the resurrection of the dead. You are the disaster of the apocalypse. Wearing this title will increase the favorability of all undead, demons, and ghosts by 1 level, but the favorability of all living beings will decrease by 1 level. All damage you deal to living beings will increase by 15%, and all damage dealt to you by living beings will increase by 15%. Bai Xiaowen pondered for a few seconds. This title is not bad. It's very practical. Xiao Rui said, wearing this title will basically mean that you can only join the undead camp. The undead have a hidden hostile relationship with us humans. Increasing it by 1 level can make them indifferent. At least, they will not directly attack us, and there is a possibility of opening a mission. And living beings are neutral to us. Decreasing it by 1 level will also make them indifferent. You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.